very clearly they want a strategic partnership with India, and they've increasingly sort of distanced themselves from Pakistan. Has that all changed? Is America hyphenating Pakistan and India once again?
I think that the United States is going to have to play a bigger role, or at least pay more attention to India-Pakistan tensions. This is obviously not something the United States wanted to do. It was hoping, and I'd add, I think that this was true for India as well. There was a hope that actually India's focus could be on China. I think that was shared between Washington and Delhi. I think it was part of the foundations for their stronger relationship. But if we're seeing a real escalation here that's going to last beyond this conflict, if there's going to be more scuffles, more tension between India and Pakistan going forward, then the United States, no matter what it wants, is probably going to have no choice but to remain more involved in this conflict, if only because it's one of the few countries that can still help mediate between the two. That's been its traditional role. It seems like it's a role it's played again this time. We don't know the full extent. Other countries were also involved in trying to mediate. But it also might mean that after several years of moving away from Pakistan and toward India, the United States will want to warm up to some extent its ties and relations with Pakistan, simply since it can, or so it can sit in this kind of mediating relationship.
The word mediation was used, of course, in that statement. Meanwhile, the big news, NSA Ajit Doval has spoken to the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. So it's no longer the Chinese Foreign Minister speaking to the Deputy Prime Minister of Pakistan, Ishaq Dar. He's also spoken now to NSA Ajit Doval. And there's a full China statement now coming on. The 10th of May 2025, Wang Yi, member of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee and Director of the Office of Central Commission for Foreign Affairs, held a phone conversation with Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Doval stated that the Pahalgam terrorist attack had caused significant casualties among Indian personnel and that India needed to take counter-terrorism actions. He emphasized that war is not India's choice and does not serve the interests of any party. Both India and Pakistan are committed to maintaining the ceasefire and hope for the early restoration of regional peace and stability. Wang Yi expressed China's condemnation of the Pahalgam terrorist attack and its opposition to all forms of terrorism. He noted that given the current complex and volatile international situation, peace and stability in Asia, hard won, should be cherished. India and Pakistan are neighboring countries that cannot be relocated. Both are also neighbors of China. China appreciates Doval's statement that war is not India's choice, sincerely hopes that both sides remain calm, exercise restraint, resolve differences through dialogue and consultations, avoid further escalation. China supports and looks forward to India and Pakistan achieving a comprehensive and lasting ceasefire through negotiations, which is in the fundamental interests of both countries, the shared aspirations of the international community. So China playing the role of statesman. Thanks to all my guests who've joined me. But that's very interesting. Gaurav and I are going to chat for the last 5 minutes of that. Gaurav, for the last 72 hours, Gaurav and I have been anchoring some of these shows. As we now come to hopefully some, and maybe a de-escalation, certainly. We don't know whether it's a full ceasefire as yet. I want your 2 or 3 big takeaways, Gaurav. Give me your 3 biggest takeaways, and then I'll give you mine. But the 3 biggest takeaways.
Point 1, India hit terror at source. Rajdeep, you and I have covered terror and counter-terror operations for decades. 1993 blasts, you've covered that. 12 places, 257 people killed. We've covered 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, 2006 train tragedies. We've lost thousands of lives in Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror. This is the first time terror has been hit at source, because we kept lamenting that we are pruning branches and leaves of terror tree and not striking at roots. India struck at roots of the terror tree. Murid ke, Bahawalpur, Sialkot, Pakistan's Punjab province is no longer off bounds. It's no longer out of bounds. You've hit them at source, but not just terrorists. You've even hit the protectors of terrorism at source. Rawalpindi has been hit. Lahore has been hit. Muridke has been hit. Bahawalpur has been hit. There's a core headquarters in Bahawalpur. There's a core headquarters in Lahore. Skardu has been hit. And China would be very worried. Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, including northern areas, are directly in the line of India's fire and nobody can do anything about it. We can strike again. Remember, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has been hit. This will embolden forces of freedom in Pakistan. So Baluchistan, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, the Afghans are rejoicing. Pakistan will be in trouble in Peshawar. Now, I am not saying that we would love a peaceful Pakistan, but we cannot have Pakistan that will have no cost when it uses terror as an instrument of state policy. Their armed forces have been weakened, not decimated, but weakened. Should we have destroyed their air force? Yes, we would have taken some hits. Ultimately, we would have destroyed it. But we would have taken some missile hits. That would have actually adversely impacted our effort to become the third largest economy. So you've done the best thing possible for now. Indus Waters Treaty is a big gain for the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the rest of the country, short term, medium term. So Rajdeep, there are many, many gains in what we've done.
Okay, so Gaurav believes that there have been strong messages that have been sent out to Pakistan in the last week. For me, in a sense, there's a sense of deja vu, because this is an area which I've often said is one of the most dangerous places on earth. I've said it for the longest time, that between two nuclear neighbors, particularly because of the nature of the Pakistani army state, and that is something that one has seen time and again, false dawns, signals coming out of Pakistan that they want to reach out to you, have a dialogue, and then you have terror striking, or you have the Pakistani army state doing operations like Kargil. And therefore, there is a lack of trust. I think what the last week has shown is just how easily two nuclear neighbors can spiral up this escalatory ladder and then not know quite how to dismount. And that's exactly what happened, because I think at the end of the day, that's what required American mediation to get the two countries to find an exit route. And I think therein lie the dangers. And purely from an Indian perspective, I think we have to realize Pakistan economically, and they got a bailout yesterday from the IMF, has been a bit of a basket case. You could say more of a basket case than even a bit of a basket case. India, on the other hand, is a country on a high growth trajectory, on its way to becoming the third largest economy in the world, one of the fastest growing economies in the world. Our focus should be at the moment to use the sweet spot that we are in to take ourselves to another level. The last thing we need is to get into this battle with Pakistan to the point of no return. And Pakistan uses every terror attack to do so. I know that the doctrine today says that every terror attack will be treated as an act of war. Now, to my mind, and this is where Gaurav and I will probably differ, that's a dangerous approach to take, unless we are clear of the end game.
Oh, absolutely.
Are we clear? You see, where I differ from Gaurav is Operation Sindoor. Yes, you've struck Bawalpur, you've struck Muridke. Having done that, did you have an end game in mind?
Yes.
Did you actually, if you had an end game, well, you haven't achieved that end game. What you've done is you've taken your first steps and then pulled back. And I think clearly when you're entering into this very, very turbulent, dangerous space when it comes to dealing with Pakistan, because it's unpredictable, it can be a rogue state. We've seen those pictures of Pakistani generals mourning at the funeral of terrorists. I think in that sense, Pakistan has been exposed yet again. It really shows to me, I think, that we need to navigate this very carefully and cautiously in the future. I believe there should be no chest thumping.
कुछ दिन से चल रही सैन्य कार्रवाई को रोकने का समझौता आज शाम को हुआ था। पिछले कुछ घंटों से इस समझौते का पाकिस्तान की ओर से घोर उल्लंघन हो रहा है। भारतीय सेना जवाबी कार्रवाई कर रही है और इस सीमा अतिक्रमण से निपट रही है। ये अतिक्रमण अत्यंत ही निंदनीय है और पाकिस्तान इनके लिए जिम्मेदार है। हमारा मानना है कि पाकिस्तान इस स्थिति को ठीक से समझे और इस अतिक्रमण को रोकने के लिए तुरंत उचित कार्रवाई करे। सेना ने इस स्थिति पर कड़ी नज़र रखी हुई है और उसे किसी भी अतिक्रमण से निपटने के लिए ठोस और सख्त कदम उठाने के लिए आदेश दे दिए गए हैं। गुड इवनिंग। For the last few hours, there have been repeated violations of the understanding arrived at earlier this evening between the Directors General of military operations of India and Pakistan. This is a breach of the understanding arrived at earlier today. The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response to these violations, and we take very, very serious notice of these violations. We call upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address these violations and deal with the situation with seriousness and responsibility. The armed forces are maintaining a strong vigil on the situation. They have been given instructions to deal strongly with any instances of a repetition of the violations of the borders along the international border as well as the line of control. Thank you.
We have a very short, brief statement by Vikram Misri, making it very clear that Pakistan has violated the ceasefire, but making it also clear that they expect Pakistan to fall in line, else India will respond appropriately. So I think there is that concern with Pakistan, and that's the point I was making, Gaurav, before we went into that presser, that with Pakistan, you never know what happens next. You can't trust your neighbor, but you have to deal with your neighbor. We cannot change, Gaurav, the geography of the subcontinent.
But we're dealing with that neighbor so beautifully. You're pounding him when you have to. You're holding that water for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. We love the people of Jammu and Kashmir more than Pakistan.
I want to see how this Indus Water Treaty abeyance works. But yes, I do believe water is a far more useful weapon. And maybe that's the pacifist in me. I believe it's a far more useful weapon than drones and missiles.
We are also friends with friends in Afghanistan. Friends in Afghanistan who don't like friends in Pakistan. Rajdeep, look at India's foreign policy, and I don't mean it in any other way. I only mean it, you know, you and I covered 26/11. You remember 26/11, 166 of us were massacred. 166 from so many countries.
Yes,
the
but
Air Force chief said, let's strike them in POK.
No, one minute.
In POK,
we exposed each and every terrorist involved in that. That was the one time that Pakistan was forced to acknowledge their role in that terror sponsoring. They had to get the Hafiz Saids and the Zakiur Rahman Lakhvis to be prosecuted. And to my mind, therefore,
and
there
produce
are two
children. Produce children in jail.
They were strategic restraint.
Conjugal rights in jail.
No, but at the end of the day, Gaurav, if this operation, and let's look, if this Operation Sindoor as we see it today, and you know, sometimes in the present we don't know what the future will bring. If Operation Sindoor is able to actually rein in Pakistan's terror infrastructure and continue its support to these proxy jihadis, radical Islamists as you call them, full marks to Operation Sindoor if that happens. And I think we can judge that a year, 2 years down the line. If on the other hand, we continue to have every now and then we bleed because of terror, I think the jury will still be out as to what we achieved with Operation Sindoor. Certainly, after 2009, you'll recall there was a brief period where Pakistan itself stopped for a while sponsoring the kind of terror. We had a number of terror blasts in the first term of Manmohan Singh from 2004 to 9. In the second term, I got a sense that India had been able to diplomatically isolate and strangulate Pakistan. That's one approach to take.
German bakery, Zaveri Bazaar.
Yes, Gaurav, but what we have seen Pathankot, then we saw Uri, then we saw Pulwama, and now we've come to Pahalgam by Saran. Terrorism, according to me, will have to be solved only when the Pakistani army state in some form or the other is dismantled and becomes a normal state. Every country has an army. The army has a country called Pakistan. That is the truism. I still, even with this ceasefire, I want to see General Mir acknowledge publicly that this was accepted. All of these, of course, Gaurav and I can go on with this debate.
But
this is a democratic newsroom.
Will you permit me just one response?
30 seconds to you.
Okay.
All yours.
I only want to say Pakistan will not be a normal state. Pakistan is not a normal state. Imagine when an Oxbridge-educated Bilawal Bhutto Zardari speaks the language of Hafiz Saeed. It is not a normal state. Hafiz Muhammad Saeed was quoted as saying, "Tum hamara pani rokoge, hum tumhara khoon bahayenge." Exactly the same language. an Oxbridge-educated Bilawal Bhutto Zardari in that language, in that tone of his. He just spoke. What's the difference?
I am only saying I believe in this particular instance, pragmatism forced two countries that were going up an escalatory spiral to pull back. If the Americans mediated to do it, so be it. I think both countries have lessons to learn. It's my view. I think India has lessons to learn, and we need a clearer end game in the future.
Yes.
The Pakistanis need to be clear that misadventurism of the kind that we saw in Pahalgam is unacceptable. So I think both countries, in my view, have lessons to learn from what has happened in the last few days. I want to go to Munish Pandey, who's joining me at the moment. Munish, late in the night, appreciate you joining us. What are you picking up from that MEA briefing? Is it clear that India still hopes, Umeed pe dunya kayam hai, is still hoping that the ceasefire will hold? What happened a couple of hours ago was only an aberration.
Well, Rajdeep, the sense is that Pakistan will come to sense and they will respect the ceasefire which was agreed between both the countries, Pakistan and India. But what we have seen since last evening is that not only at LOC, but also in Jammu and Kashmir, some parts of Rajasthan and some parts of Punjab, the situation has not changed what it was seen yesterday or day before yesterday. Only the activities were lessened. So there has been ceasefire violations at multiple places across the India-Pakistan border. But as far as MEA briefing is concerned, one thing was very clear, that army has been given a free hand to give a proper reply to what Pakistan is doing. And also India still expects Pakistan to respect the ceasefire agreement which was agreed between both the countries. And why, Rajdeep? Because there was a statement from Pakistan Prime Minister also. It was in front of the entire world, and within hours that, that agreement has been breached by Pakistan. So this is something which the Pakistan has to take responsibility. If there is something wrong between the government and the army that we are not aware of, but it's certainly
Rajdeep, that's a very significant point that Munish is making.
The Pakistan...
Yes, is everybody in Pakistan on the same page? Is the army and the civil government on the same page? Are junior officers on the same page with General Asim Munir? Is General Asim Munir perhaps facing some problems within? These are many issues that there'll be more clarity in the days ahead. But before Rajdeep, we carry this conversation forward, let's listen into Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri.
For the last few hours, there have been repeated violations of the understanding arrived at earlier this evening between the Directors General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. This is a breach of the understanding arrived at earlier today. The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response to these violations, and we take very, very serious notice of these violations. We call upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address these violations and deal with the situation with seriousness and responsibility. The armed forces are maintaining a strong vigil on the situation. They have been given instructions to deal strongly with any instances of a repetition of the violations of the borders along the international border as well as the line of control.
Okay, let's quickly bring in our colleague Amit Bharadwaj into this conversation, and our reporters are reporting from across the length and breadth of our country. In some instances, like you see in Munish's case, he's still not switching on the lights. Lights still remain off in some of the border areas. It's still lights out situation. Amit, where are you? Of course, it does appear you're in a situation, in a position where you're able to switch on your lights. How bad is the situation that you're able to pick up all along the LC and the IB right now, and the government response that army's been given a free hand to respond in case there are ceasefire violations?
Gaurav, things have changed in the Srinagar town in the past few hours. First, everybody in the town was pretty relaxed, and they were hoping to enjoy their evening because the past 72 hours has been really stressful for the people living on the line of control as well as those living in Srinagar city. But what we saw was first the sounds of explosion happened, and after that I personally recorded those visuals of anti-drone system being activated and dealing with these aerial objects. And after that, nearly for an hour or 2 hours rather, I would say now by now 90 minutes at least, there has been no aerial activity, because of which the blackout that was imposed in Srinagar has been removed now. The lights has been restored, and that is why you are able to see me in this particular state. But a few minutes back, it was entirely, completely blackout in Srinagar, and so in the areas of Baramulla, Uri sector. What we can also confirm our viewers is that the kind of visuals that we have heard and the testimonies that we have gotten from people living in the Baramulla town, they have heard similar loud explosions in their areas as well. Many of them suspect these were drone activities or the aerial activities which has been successfully dealt with. And if you connect with the very limited words that has been given out by the MEA today, Vikram Misri himself addressing the press conference this late, media briefing this late in the night, he has very clearly indicated that ceasefire violations have happened. It has happened despite the understanding that was made between India and Pakistan, and that our forces are adequately handling it. So in case of Srinagar, the kind of explosions that we heard this evening and the way anti-drone system got into the action mode, it was pretty clear that our forces have not settled down. They are completely alert to tackle with any situation that might unfold through the night, because everybody knows that despite the fact that there is an elected government in Pakistan, it's sort of a rogue nation. You cannot trust them, and you cannot believe that the elected establishment and the military establishment would be on the same page on any decision, whether it be the internal matters or external matters, or a matter where the international community is also involved. And that is what these fears have been proven right. And it's very fortunate that our forces, our air defense system, possibly was on best alert. And that is why whatever situation is unfolding, yes, is being taken care of. Back to you.
I want to go to Geeta Mohan at this stage. Geeta is our diplomatic editor, and she's been tracking this very closely. Geeta, what's the sense you got from the Foreign Secretary's statement? Is it just sending out a message to Pakistan? Look, 3 hours ago you agreed to a ceasefire. Please stick to it. Are we once again heading towards an escalatory ladder, or is it fair to say that the next 24 hours will tell us whether this ceasefire holds or not?
I think it's the latter, Rajdeep. The next 24 hours will be very, very critical. The ceasefire has not held. I had come after the briefing, the brief short statement, not a briefing, by Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri earlier, where they'd announced that there's a mutual understanding, not a ceasefire, Rajdeep. We were told very clearly to say this is a mutual understanding between India and Pakistan to hold fire. And let's see whether if the two countries manage to hold fire. That was not to be. About 40 minutes later, I was in office and we had news coming of the ceasefire violations. And we're back here in the Ministry of External Affairs. Again, Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri earlier, there was going to be a background briefing on the ongoing situation. But then it turned out to become an on the record by Foreign Secretary himself. So Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri came, again, gave a very brief statement and left. There was no background briefing by the officials. But what is important and significant over here is him coming and very clearly, this is a fog of war, Rajdeep, and you see so much of information coming. Was there a ceasefire violation? Was there not? Was there an attack? Wasn't there an attack? And in all that, the Indian government coming and accepting that, yes, there have been repeated violations of the so-called mutual understanding between India and Pakistan by Pakistan, and that the armed forces have been asked to give appropriate response. While they've also asked Pakistan to take appropriate steps to stop what's happening at the border. Now, on both counts, the fact that India is responding appropriately.
That was the significant part, that they have given Pakistan a window. Unlike, before the ceasefire, before this mutual agreement was reached, the tone was far more belligerent. Here, you're giving Pakistan, telling Pakistan, look, we've signed a ceasefire agreement, you better adhere to it. We will respond appropriately, and we hope and expect you to adhere to it. So there is a sense that we are leaving that window of some hope that possibly in the next 24 hours, and we will, therefore, I think that tomorrow is far more important, where we will know whether Pakistan is abiding by this ceasefire. They will have no excuses if these violations continue same time tomorrow evening.
Well, which is why, Rajdeep, I said that the next 24 hours, which is the latter part of your question, was more important. The next 24 hours are going to be very important, but I'd say that tonight is going to also be very, very significant. Should the violations continue through the night, should there be an escalation from just arty firing to drones, then we are looking at a situation going back to look at the briefing. The sum of the briefing, when they put that out, it said Operation Sindoor, special briefing on Operation Sindoor, which very clearly says that it's still an ongoing operation, that it hasn't ended. And why? Is because there have been violations of again, I'm saying it because, officials over here asked us to call it not a ceasefire. It was not a ceasefire. It was a mutual understanding between India and Pakistan to hold fire. And that has not held. So
when is
tonight is going to be significant.
When is the DGMO meeting, Gaurav?
On the 12th. So it's usually, the DGMOs talk on phone every Tuesday. That's a standard operating procedure, and that is one CBM that's held.
So that's, that's on Monday?
Tuesday. Usually it's every Tuesday they have a conversation.
Monday. Yeah.
So then this time they'll talk on Monday.
I think they're talking on Monday.
And every Tuesday they anyway have a conversation. At times additional DGMOs, at times DGMOs. And when that conversation was put, where are India and Pakistan talking, the DGMOs always remain in conversation. And that's the best CBM in a way that military to military, then there is no confusion.
Okay.
Rajdeep, that is a very significant point. Of course, often it leads to a situation that while ceasefire violations are happening, Pakistan is sending in terrorists. Then I've been told by some former DGMOs, when they were DGMOs, that Pakistan would be given a stern warning. Military to military, then they do something at times. So that CBM is always a good thing to have.
Either way, I think we've had a evening where there's been lots of developments that have taken place, rapid switches and turns and twists and turns. Our correspondents will carry on with Gaurav, and he will take you right through this night. If there are any more ceasefire violations, you know that Gaurav will be the first to know about them, and he will report them. As of now, the hope is that the next 24 hours will tell us whether India and Pakistan have come to a mutual agreement. We can only hope. And I can only hope as a pacifist, and I claim I am fully committed to the whole notion of pacifism, that the two countries see what Donald Trump said, not me, common sense. And common sense dictates that you don't fight 21st century wars with neighbors with drones and missiles unless you want to get your economy back down a tube. And Pakistan's economy has been down a tube. And if India wants to move on this path, that it is compete with global economies, have a place on the high table, be the leader of the global south, be part of G20, then I think India too needs to be very focused on how it's going to deal with terror on one side, but not allow that to confuse it when it comes to its other strategic objectives and, more importantly, its geo-economic objectives. I'm going to leave it at that. I've given enough gyan.
No, you're absolutely right. I'm a pacifist like you.
Come on, Gaurav. Gaurav, you're a pacifist?
Absolutely.
But I believe Gaurav seems to, much like I, on election day, get all excited. Gaurav seems to get excited by the prospect of having war games in a TV studio.
Not really.
He's a Lashkar-e-Noida.
Which is so not true, Rajdeep, because I have reported from ground zero where most people don't dare to go, whether it's the Russia-Ukraine war or Israel-Hamas war or the Kargil war. But that's not the point, including 26/11 standing right outside Taj when Kasab and his buddies were lobbing grenades outside. But that's not the point. My point is, we have to go by our Sanatan philosophy, which is Shakti se Shanti. As Ramdhari Singh Dinkar very clearly said, that only the brave are respected. If you're weak, you turn the other cheek, then he'll keep, slapping you on every cheek. So pacifism should not mean weakness. And
Point
that is
taken.
where, problems arise. Shakti se Shanti, and we should never suffer the Prithviraj Chauhan syndrome that you forgive a Muhammad Gauri and he'll come back the next year and then give you grief.
We'll have another debate on this. But my thoughts and prayers today, and I say this really with all sincerity, is with the people of the border villages of this country. Please think about them. There was a lot of anger and rage after, and legitimately so, after what happened in Pahalgam, Baisaran. Completely unacceptable, the killing of innocents. But there are people living on the border villages who've suffered, often anonymous villagers in places like Poonch. And we haven't perhaps said enough about them. True. Their courage is not easy. True. To live in these border villages. They infrastructurally do not have the same benefits as the big metros. It's been hellish for them over the last few days. And that's the madness I spoke about. You can't have these villages suffering in the way they have. My thoughts are with all those innocent civilians. If Pakistan believes that that's the way they want to prosecute war, then we have to reply in kind. We cannot allow innocents, whether through terror or artillery shelling, to suffer. That's what I believe pacifism is about. Ensuring that innocent civilians are not subject to the gun, be it that of the terrorist or that of an army. But that's enough that I've said for today. As I said, my thoughts and prayers will always be with those who suffer because of violence. Gaurav will take over from here. Let's listen in once again to the Foreign Secretary, Vikram Misri.
But wonderful discussion, Rajdeep.
For the last few hours, there have been repeated violations of the understanding arrived at earlier this evening between the Directors General of Military Operations of India and Pakistan. This is a breach of the understanding arrived at earlier today. The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response to these violations, and we take very, very serious notice of these violations. We call upon Pakistan to take appropriate steps to address these violations and deal with the situation with seriousness and responsibility. The armed forces are maintaining a strong vigil on the situation. They have been given instructions to deal strongly with any instances of a repetition of the violations of the borders along the international border as well as the line of control.
So the Foreign Secretary making it very clear that the armed forces have a free hand. In case there's a ceasefire violation by Pakistan, it should be responded to. The latest situation on ground right now, and remember, we have our reporters on ground and we report from ground zero, irrespective of what people may think. But I want to quickly cut across to Munish Pandey, who joins us on the show. Also with us is Amit Bharadwaj. Munish, you're still in a location where you cannot switch on your lights. There's still a blackout. While people may hope that Pakistan may reform or maybe turn a new leaf, but clearly Pakistan is way too down. It's almost like a drug addict. It's addicted to terror. Even if it wants to reform, its army won't permit it. Munish, what's the situation right now?
Well, Gaurav, as far as Punjab and Rajasthan is concerned, most of the areas are still in blackout. And why? Because at least in Punjab, there were big cities like Gurdaspur, Pathankot, Hoshiarpur, Jalandhar and Faridkot. In all these areas, drones were sighted, and those drones have been neutralized by the Indian Armed Forces. The similar thing happened in Rajasthan also. So there was hope. Let me tell you, Gaurav, this evening around 7 o'clock, I was in Amritsar and I went to the market, and people were really happy because after many days they came out of their home, the shops were open, they wanted to walk around the streets and all. So they were really happy that at least this ceasefire has happened. But when I spoke to most of those gentlemen, they told me that Pakistan is a country which can't be believed. We have those bites on record also, Gaurav, and this is exactly what happened. Pakistan is a country which can't be believed, and within hours of agreeing to a ceasefire, Pakistan violated those ceasefire, and there have been multiple air violations as far as this part of country is concerned, and that is why we are seeing blackout happening in most of the parts of the Punjab and Rajasthan. And as far as the administration is concerned, at some places like in Amritsar, there has been no drone sighting, but as a precautionary measure, because Amritsar is a very sensitive area. Pakistan has tried sending armed drones with 10 kgs of explosives, towards the Kant areas. So it is a very sensitive area. That is why precautionary, the Amritsar is still in blackout, but in most of the areas, drones have been sighted, and the administration still believes that the situation will get better. But again, they are not ready to believe that Pakistan will respect any agreement as far as ceasefire violation is concerned.
I agree with all those people. I mean,
Munish,
I completely agree with you. I mean, I personally, and I've covered Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror for 3 decades. Clearly, you cannot trust Pakistan. And I also want, to bring Amit Bharadwaj into this conversation. Amit, in Srinagar, people are rejoicing, but in the back of their heads, is there an apprehension that Pakistan could do more? Because Pakistan has done so much to hurt the economy of Jammu and Kashmir, and that, God forbid, it could do that again, Amit.
Gaurav, apprehensions have been proven right. All through the evening when the ceasefire was announced and the formal announcement was made by the both sides, Pakistan and India, people, whether it be in Baramulla, Kupwara, or even in Srinagar, they were very skeptical about Pakistan, and they do not trust what the political establishment is saying until unless the statement also comes from the military establishment. And they were happy, rejoicing the fact that things might get back to normal. And moreover, I met a couple of people who belong from the business community as well as the entrepreneur class, which is a very vibrant class, by the way, not only in Srinagar but also in up towards Baramulla town as well. And they were hoping that once the Amarnath Yatra begins, the economy might come back on the track. But again, the bigger question was for tonight, in their minds, whether Pakistan will stick to the ceasefire or whether there will be again RT firings, shellings, as well as drone attacks, attempts as it has been made by Pakistan in the past 72 hours. And exactly
very clearly,
that has happened. We know why we don't trust Pakistan and why people out here don't trust Pakistan.
That's a far more pragmatic approach, and especially people and their families who've bled at the hands of Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror. Gentlemen, many thanks for joining me. Before I slip into a break, I want our viewers also to know the success India had. Muridke and Bahawalpur and Pakistan's Punjab province. Ever since we've suffered at the hands of Pakistani terror, these were considered out of bounds, that you could never target Pakistan in its Punjab province. What has happened in this strike is that theory is no longer valid. India has not only struck terror at source, India has also struck the terror sponsors at source. In Rawalpindi, in Lahore, in Bahawalpur, and all the way from Skardu to Rahim Yar Khan. Now, in that strike at Bahawalpur and at Muridke, this distinction between state actors and non-state actors, it's gone forever. Because when a terrorist died, you had Pakistan Army's corps commanders and division commanders and brigade commanders and their special forces and their soldiers and officers giving a guard of honor to terrorists who'd been killed. And UN designated global terrorists were either a part of it, leading the namaz there, or actually some of them were in that coffin that was then put 6 feet under. But that's just one part of the story. The second part of the story is this Choli Daman Ka Saath, the blood brothers that terrorists and Pakistan army personnel are. I'm not saying this. Watch the images that I'm about to show you. Take a look at this rogues gallery of terrorists who've been eliminated. This is an India Today exclusive.
A 25-minute multi-domain assault on 9 terror camps in Pakistan and POK. Terror hotbeds reduced to rubble. Most wanted terrorists and terror pads destroyed by Indian forces in a precise strike. Exclusive information accessed by India Today reveals the elimination of over 100 terrorists on May 7. Among those killed in Operation Sindoor were 5 top operatives from Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed involved in planning and executing attacks against India. Sources say Indian forces neutralized Mudassar Khadian Khas, also known as Abu Jundal, an LET terrorist who was in charge of Markaz Taiba in Muridke. Jundal received a guard of honor at his funeral from Pakistan Army. Among the attendees were a serving Lieutenant General and IG of Punjab Police. The prayer was led by US designated Lashkar terrorist Hafiz Abdul Rauf. Another key target eliminated was Jaish-e-Mohammed's Hafiz Muhammad Jamil, the eldest brother-in-law of Masood Azhar. Jamil was in charge of Markaz Subhanallah in Bahawalpur. He was involved in radical indoctrination and fundraising for JEM. Also killed was Muhammad Yusuf Azhar, known by several aliases including Ustad Ji and Muhammad Salim. A Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist, Yusuf Azhar was brother-in-law of Masood Azhar. He was the weapons trainer for JEM. He was also suspect in the Kandahar IC-814 hijacking and linked to multiple terror attacks in Jammu and Kashmir. Another top Lashkar operative, Khalid, alias Abu Aksha, was also confirmed dead. He had orchestrated multiple terror strikes in Jammu and Kashmir. Khalid was involved in weapons smuggling from Afghanistan. The 5th high-value target was Muhammad Hassan Khan, a next-generation Jaish leader. He was a son of Mufti Asghar Khan Kashmiri, an operational commander of the Jaish-e-Mohammed in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. Hassan Khan coordinated terror operations in Jammu and Kashmir. Operation Sindoor was not just retaliatory but a show of India's resolve and capability in dismantling terror infrastructure. The operation followed the April 22nd terror attack in Pahalgam that left 26 dead. Bureau Report, India Today.
Hello and a very warm welcome to an India Today special broadcast. I'm Gaurav Sawant. Big story. The Indian Air Force decimated multiple Pakistan Air Force bases from Skardu in Pakistan-occupied Jammu Kashmir, coming down from POJK to Pakistan's Punjab, the Noor Khan Air Base, the Murid Chakwal Air Base, the Rafiki Air Base, the Rahim Yar Khan Air Base, the Jacobabad Air Base, the Sargodha Air Base. Pakistan's frontline air bases were completely decimated. There's breaking news coming in. There is a very important security meeting that's currently underway at Prime Minister Narendra Modi's residence at 7 Lok Kalyan Marg. The Chief of Defence Staff General Anil Chauhan, the Chiefs of the Army, Navy and Air Force, National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, Defence Minister Rajnath Singh, the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri are present in this very, very important security meeting. And in this security meeting, perhaps there would be an assessment, a stock-taking, a debrief of India's spectacular operations as part of Operation Sindoor, where the entire frontline air bases of Pakistan, its entire air defense system was taken down. Lahore was vulnerable. The HQ-9B systems of Lahore destroyed. The radar defense shield destroyed. There were at least 8 strikes that were carried out at various locations in Pakistan and Pakistan-occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and the government has given details of some of these strikes that were carried out, and I have that list with me. From Chaklala to Sukur, from Rahim Yar Khan to Kasur, from Sialkot to Noor Khan Air Base, the Rafiki Air Base, they were all targeted, and that's not all. Sargodha was targeted. Now, this just goes on to show that all that Pakistan spoke of, it did not have much to defend itself. Of course, it did mount a couple of swift offensives even on the Indian side, escalating this conflict. But the manner in which Pakistan was punished just goes on to show. The big question, the ceasefire that has been agreed to, that came into effect from 5 o'clock this evening, 3:30, Pakistan's DGMO reached out to the Indian DGMO, and that ceasefire is in effect from 5 p.m. But the announcement was made by US President Donald Trump, and then subsequently there was a message that came in from Marco Rubio, US Secretary of State, and the National Security Advisor, and US Vice President J.D. Vance. I want to cut across to India today's Shivani Sharma for the latest on this big story, and Shivani's been tracking developments relentlessly. The best team of reporters on India today are on India First, and they've been all across the line of control, the international border, reporting relentlessly without a break, getting you a 360-degree perspective on Operation Sindoor. Bring us details of the meeting that's currently underway, Shivani.
Gaurav, this is a very important meeting, definitely a debrief and an assessment meeting of what has happened in few days, Operation Sindoor, and even after that, what has been escalated from Pakistan and how India responded to it. And very important out here to mention, Gaurav, though the ceasefire has been announced, but the forces remain on a high alert, high preparedness, and they are vigilant across the borders, and the further plans are being discussed in this particular meeting where Prime Minister Narendra Modi is meeting all the service chiefs along with the CDS. And most important out here, we must mention that in the course of last 15 days, there have been several such meetings individually with the chiefs, individually with the Defence Minister, the 2 CCS that happened, and multiple times the Prime Minister met the service chiefs. So this is one very important meeting, because it is an important day as the conclusion comes to the escalations that were going on from Pakistan, and ceasefire has been maintained. So Prime Minister is not only assessing the situation, he is also monitoring and discussing the future course of action by the forces as they still remain, and they are quite vigilant across the borders, the airspace, also the land, the line of control, everywhere. The forces remain vigilant, and there is the next round of talks with the DGMOs of both the countries on Monday. So we have this particular deliberation that goes on in the national capital.
Okay. As we look at the ceasefire that's coming in place and the deliberations that are currently underway, there's an assessment of the security situation on ground. Look, the intelligence chiefs will still keep an eye on what's happening across, and the armed forces, because can Pakistan be trusted? If you go by history, no, Pakistan cannot be trusted. It's agreed to ceasefires in the past. It's sought ceasefires in the past. It's come to India on a bent knee in the past. Remember the Shimla agreement? Pakistan sought negotiations with India, said, let's just have an agreement, and then it continued to spread terror in India. And it's done that all the time. 47, 48, 65, 71, so many times there's been ceasefire, but Pakistani terror has continued. But what is it that the government is saying now? Let's listen in to Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri announcing that ceasefire. Let's also get in reactions that are coming in from Commodore Raghu Nair of the Indian Navy, and of course Colonel Sophia Qureshi and Wing Commander Vyomika Singh.
Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As the Foreign Secretary had said, you're aware there's an understanding that has been reached to stop all military activities at sea, on the air and on the land. and the Indian Navy, Indian Army, and the Indian Air Force have been instructed to adhere to this understanding. Since the tragic events at Pahalgam, you're aware that our responses have been measured and very responsible. Details of these have been shared with you over the past few days through our various press briefings. What has also happened is that there is a significant amount of misinformation that is being undertaken from the other side. And as a professional military organization, we thought it is also our duty to dispel those misinformation aspects, as also state the facts of the case as they stand. Towards that, I will now hand over to my colleague, Colonel Qureshi. Whilst we will be adhering to the understanding that has been reached today, that is the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, and the Indian Air Force, we remain fully prepared and ever vigilant and committed to defending the sovereignty and integrity of the motherland. Every misadventure by Pakistan has been met with strength, and every future escalation will invite a decisive response. We remain fully operationally ready to launch whatever operations may be required in defense of the nation.
Over the past few days, as we have seen, Pakistan all has suffered very heavy and unsustainable losses after it has given us an unprovoked attack on our installations. It has suffered losses in both land and air. There has been an extensive damage to the crucial Pakistani air bases like Skardu, Sargodha, Jacobabad, and Bholari. In addition, a loss of AD weapon system and radars made the defense of Pakistani airspace untenable. Across the line of control, extensive and precise damage to military infrastructure and command control centers and logistic installations. In addition to that, 2 military personnel had led to complete breakdown of its defensive and offensive capability and also Pakistani morale. Several attempts were made by Pakistan on spreading a misinformation campaign, as we have seen for the last few days. There were attempts made to say that our S-400 at a northern base was destroyed, which was completely false, and that it was destroyed by a JF-17, it was a false information. Also, that the BrahMos installation was attacked and it was destroyed was false. The destruction of airfields at Srinagar, Jammu, Pathankot, Bhuj, Nalia, etc. was also a false claim. The forward ammunition dump at Chandigarh and Beas are also fit and fine, and we showed you these in the photographs in the morning briefing today. There was a certain different way of miscampaign that Pakistan conducted by its press conferences, which was conducted in a manner which was completely misleading and devoid of facts. Pakistan has been spreading fabricated allegations that the Indian Armed Forces have targeted mosques. Let us make this very clear here that India is a secular nation and the Indian Armed Forces are a reflection of our constitutional values. We hold every place of worship of all faiths in the highest regard. Our operations have been aimed exclusively at terrorist camps and facilities being used for anti-India activities. No religious sites, I repeat, no religious sites have been targeted by the Indian Armed Forces.
इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस ने पाकिस्तान को बहुत भारी नुकसान पहुंचाया, उनके मिलिट्री इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर्स को, चाहे वो लैंड एसेट्स हो या फिर उनके एयर एसेट्स। यही नहीं, इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस ने पाकिस्तान की एयरफील्ड्स स्कर्दू, जकोबाबाद, सरगोदा और बुलारी को बहुत नुकसान पहुंचाया। इसके अलावा पाकिस्तान के एयर डिफेंस सिस्टम, रडार सिस्टम, उनको भी एयर स्पेस में अनटेनेबल किया। यह भी बताना चाहती हूँ कि लाइन ऑफ कंट्रोल के पास पाकिस्तान के कमांड एंड कंट्रोल, लॉजिस्टिक इंस्टॉलेशंस और उनके मिलिट्री इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, मिलिट्री पर्सनल का इतना भारी नुकसान हुआ कि पाकिस्तान की ऑफेंसिव व डिफेंसिव कैपेबिलिटी को नष्ट कर दिया गया। अंत में मैं फिर से ये बात दोहराना चाहूँगी, इंडियन आर्म फोर्सेस पूरी तरह से तैयार है, सतर्क है और भारत की संप्रभुता और अखंडता की रक्षा के लिए पूरी तरह से कमिटेड है। अब मैं आपको बताना चाहती हूँ कि पाकिस्तान के एक प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस में ये बात की गई थी कि उनके सीनियर मिलिट्री ऑफिसर्स, जो कि पूरी तरह से ये भ्रामक है और तथ्यों से दूर है, कि पाकिस्तान की ओर से ये झूठा आरोप भी लगाया जा रहा है कि भारतीय सेना ने मस्जिदों को नुकसान पहुंचाया। मैं इससे बिल्कुल स्पष्ट करना चाहती हूं कि इंडिया इज ए सेक्युलर नेशन और हमारी सेना भारत के कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वैल्यूज की एक बहुत प्यारी झलक है। अब मैं आपको पाकिस्तान की मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंपेन के बारे में अवगत कराऊंगी। पहला, पाकिस्तान ने यह क्लेम किया कि उसने अपने JF-17 से हमारे S-400 व ब्रह्मोस मिसाइल बेस को नुकसान पहुंचाया, जो कि बिल्कुल गलत है। दूसरा, उसका यह भी मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंपेन था कि हमारी एयरफील्ड, जो कि सिरसा, जम्मू, पठानकोट, बठिंडा, नलिया और भुज में है, ये उसका मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन भी बहुत गलत है। तीसरा, पाकिस्तान के मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन कैंपेन के मुताबिक हमारे एम्यूनिशन डम्प्स जो चंडीगढ़ और बियास में है उसका डैमेज हुआ, यह भी बिल्कुल गलत है। हमने आपको मॉर्निंग ब्रीफिंग में बताया था विद फैक्ट्स एंड फिगर के साथ कि ये सारी चीजें बिल्कुल सही सलामत हैं।
Harshvardhan Shringla, former Foreign Secretary of India, also former Ambassador to the United States of America, joining us on this India Today special broadcast. Ambassador, as always, welcome on India Today. Your first thoughts on the ceasefire that's been arrived between India and Pakistan?
Well, I think it was a surprise, let's say, announcement. But if you look at some of the messaging yesterday, we had kept the option open. If the Foreign Secretary had said that we are committed to peace, but the onus is on Pakistan to de-escalate the situation. Unfortunately, Pakistan didn't do it last night. But today, I think they've come around, and there are a number of reasons why they could have come around. One, of course, is that U.S. pressure, and U.S. has exercised its influence on Pakistan to bring them to the table. But I think the other reason lies in what the Ministry of Defense briefing has conveyed to us, that Pakistan's military abilities had been severely degraded. Their radars and their air defense system was degraded. Their critical airfields had been bombed, that the morale of the armed forces is coming down. I don't think they could have sustained this conflict for much longer, and it was in their interest to come to the ceasefire table.
So they were compelled, Ambassador. Is that your understanding? Ambassador, you work very closely with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. What was different and what led to this very changed response, this very aggressive response by India to Pakistan's state-sponsored terror? We've been suffering this terror for decades, Ambassador.
No, absolutely. But the difference under Prime Minister Modi's leadership is that 2016, there was the Uri attack. We had a response. Our special operations team went across the border and eliminated a few of the terrorist camps that were there. 2019, we had Pulwama, and we saw strikes across the border by our Air Force. This time, in the wake of the Pahalgam terrorist attack, I think Operation Sindoor was a fitting response to that heinous act that was perpetrated by terrorists that was sponsored by Pakistan. And but our actions were very calibrated, that we hit the terrorist camps. Those terrorists that were directly responsible for Pahalgam were hit. The Lashkar-e-Toiba, their headquarters was hit. Some of their main operatives were eliminated. Similarly with the Jaish-e-Mohammed. So I think we have avenged the memory of those of our citizens who were gunned down so mercilessly in Pahalgam. We have maintained since then a very firm and uncompromising position, but at the same time, we have not gone beyond. I mean, we could have done a lot more. We could have gone out and hammered the Pakistanis on all fronts. But what we did was a very proportionate, a very calibrated strike, not only in Operation Sindoor, but subsequently in response to Pakistani kinetic actions. I think we had also been very firm in our response. And as External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar said, He said that we will be firm in our response to any escalation that Pakistan undertakes. And that is what it was.
Did we seek any assistance or intervention from any foreign power? Did Pakistan seek that? What brought about the US intervention in your appreciation, sir?
So as you can see that, as you could have seen that our interlocutors were talking, or our leadership was talking to their interlocutors across the board. It's part of our diplomatic outreach. We were in touch with the United States, with UK, with Russia, with Saudi Arabia, with UAE, a number of countries. I think all of these countries have been made fully aware of our position, our approach to the entire situation, but also I think in terms of the influence they could exercise in Pakistan to ask them to, in their own interests, to climb down from this misadventure that was undertaken in initiating the terrorist attack and then escalating the situation to attack civilian and military installations across northern and western India.
Ambassador, the fact that there is no change is what sources are telling India today in the Indus Waters Treaty being held in abeyance. Now, what signal does that send out, not just to Pakistan, but to the rest of the world, sir?
Yeah, I think the diplomatic and economic and other pressures that we can bring upon and bear on Pakistan will continue to be there. I don't think we're going to relent on that sort of pressure, because we don't believe that Pakistan is going to change its fundamental attitude. The leopard doesn't change its spots, and Pakistan is not going to change its support for cross-border terrorism. In fact, what has been borne out by this incident is Pakistan's own, complicity, the state's complicity in what is happening. Earlier, there was a separation between the state and non-state actors, the terrorists that operated from Pakistan. At least on the face of it, there was a pretense of a gap between the two. Today, there is no gap. We have seen that in the funeral of the terrorists who are proscribed under the UN Security Council's list, there were senior military and civilian officials present, paid actually obeisance during that funeral, which shows that the state is directly involved and culpable when it comes to terrorist action. So
that's such a significant point you're making, Ambassador, and I want you to elaborate on it, and we'll just get those images out of a Pakistan Army general, a corps commander being there, several military officers being there at the funeral of a terrorist. We'll just play out those images. What impression, Pakistani army personnel standing for that namaz-e-janaza, not just in Muridke, but also in Bahawalpur. Is that reason enough, in your appreciation, for Pakistan to be on that either FATF grey list, or more attention to be paid to that 1267 sanctions committee, that Pakistan remains a state sponsor of terror?
I think it makes clear to the international community that the pretense of Pakistan actually, not being a part of that terrorist infrastructure is no longer there. The gloves are off. I think current leadership, the military and the deep state leadership, believe and are part of that effort to I would say, encourage and even use terrorism as an instrument of state policy. And that is why our reaction has to be very firm. I believe there is a consideration that we would consider any future act of terrorism as an act of war.
And let me now quickly cut across and bring into this conversation Ambassador K.C. Singh, a senior top diplomat, a former top diplomat who joins us on this special broadcast. Ambassador K.C. Singh, your appreciation of the ceasefire that's come into effect from 1700 hours this afternoon.
Gaurav, let me first say it's welcome. As on your programs and on others, I've been anticipating it, because with both the Saudis, particularly after the Deputy Foreign Minister had met the Prime Minister in Delhi, and then he resurfaced in Islamabad, and Marco Rubio's remarks, it was quite clear that they were working in tandem to bring it to a close. And also the foot soldiers had not crossed the border, or the LOC. It was really testing each other's air defenses. It was a post-Ukraine kind of testing of your capabilities to hit and capabilities to stop. And that had been going on for some time. So it was more to see whether we can stop the Pakistani attacks and then still get through. And Pakistan was trying the same, and then we did one better. And I think, therefore, that was there. But then in the morning came the IMF uh, loan, which was given to them, and there was much despondency in India. Why had they done that? No, very clearly, that was the carrot which was handed out by the Americans after getting a commitment from Pakistan. They would have already got that commitment. But the terms were being worked out. And as Marco Rubio has said in his tweet, they have mediated and there would probably be talks on a range of subjects. So at the moment, it's welcome that we have a ceasefire at the ground level. The two militaries the test will be whether Pakistan observes it across the LOC or not. Or is it only across the international border? So if they continue some kind of firing across the LOC, then it's not a complete ceasefire. I doubt they will do it because once the Americans have stepped in and with their economic vulnerability, they would not risk it. And also remember one thing, that Nawaz Sharif has come back to Pakistan. He was in London. Yes. And he's not liked by the army. His brother is an army's favorite. The fact that Nawaz Sharif came back, the fact that he attended a meeting at his brother's house means that General Munir will have some reckoning. Okay. He'll not get away with it. So there will be domestic implications in Pakistan. Let's wait and see. But at the moment, it's a very good thing the ceasefire has come. And let's hope it holds.
Did India, you said India was one up. So if India had the advantage, considering India had bombed airfields from Skardu down to Rahim Yar Khan, should India have pressed ahead once it had punched holes in Pakistan's air defense system to, there's some reckoning for General Asim Munir. Would that have been rubbing General Asim Munir's face, in the ground? Or would that have meant losses even on our side in your appreciation?
Look, it's a country with nuclear weapons. There are red lines in them. If you say we can occupy Lahore, we could have sent our troops. No, that is not, I don't think that was the Indian objective. That was probably not even possible. It would have taken a lot of loss of life, military equipment, loss to Indian economy. It'll affect at a time when there's already global disruption because of Trump's attack on global trade. It was not advisable to extend it beyond a limited purpose. The limited purpose was this time go beyond the punishment inflicted at Balakot and do a Balakot plus. But we also, I think, wanted to see that post-Ukraine, it's a new way of fighting battles. And therefore, Pakistan probably was very confident. They had got from Turkey, they got from China, they got these drones. So they thought they'll be able to penetrate the Indian defenses. My worry was when I wrote about a week earlier, I said we need to go and hit Muridke and Bahawalpur, but let's have an air defense. Now, I didn't know what was the air defense that they had. So obviously the government knew the air defense that they had. And they've demonstrated it, that we can stop not only the drones, we can even stop the missiles, and we can penetrate them. Therefore, you have restored deterrence. What had happened after Balakot and collapsed after Pahalgam is that we have restored deterrence. And now it is for Pakistan to play their cards. And I have a feeling there'll be internal changes in Pakistan, including probably General Munir at some stage.
That's a very interesting point that you're making, that this may just be endgame Asim Munir, because we've also joined by Ambassador Leela Ponappa. Ambassador Ponappa, could this well be endgame Asim Munir in Pakistan, considering Pakistani air bases from Skardu to Rahim Yar Khan have been bombed, their air defense system lies in tatters? Should India have pressed home the advantage? Because Operation Sindoor was, in a way, India saying enough is enough. But are we, as some argue, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory? We should have pressed home the advantage?
I agree with what I heard of Casey saying just a few minutes earlier. Namely, the objective in this case was to attack the terrorist bases. And this was done. Now, I don't think we should treat this as a job finished. Frankly, to quote Churchill in another context, this is only the end of the beginning. There is a long haul yet to be undertaken because it requires structural change, attitudinal change, not just within the Pakistan army itself and their have always been tensions over there between some of the junior officers and the corps commanders and the chief. There are tensions with the political hierarchy and the leadership, such as it is. And ultimately, of course, it will be for the people of Pakistan, including the jailed Imran Khan and his followers, who do enjoy popularity.
Okay.
So I think at this stage, we have reached a certain position. The ceasefire is conditional. The diplomatic decisions remain in place. We will have to calibrate it. It will be a slow process. It will be a long process. As much as at the end of the 1971 war for Bangladesh, the Simla process took all of 5 years to restore normalcy. But that was in another context. This is another context. And we've got to try to calibrate it without triumphalism, but with a very clear resolve that this is the kind of action we will take if India is hurt in the way it was at Pahalgam and at so many other places earlier for the past 30 plus years.
Pakistan has usually been a very unreliable neighbor. You'd recall, Ambassador, that when Pervez Musharraf, when Atal Bihari Vajpayee traveled to Pakistan, Pervez Musharraf said, we will not permit our territory to be used for terror against India. And then we had the 2006 train bombing, when Dr. Manmohan Singh was having this interaction with Musharraf again, we had 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. So and then we had Kargil before that, when the Lahore process was on. So each time behind this peace or ceasefire, they are plotting the next attack. Once they get this IMF bailout, will they not be using that same money perhaps to get a better air defense system, to get in more fighter jets, and whatever weaknesses we've exposed in their systems, they will improve upon that and then target us again?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right, Gaurav. This is exactly what happened after 1971. Within a few years, the troop levels just on the West Pakistan side matched India's troops along the line of control and the international border. So they will certainly do that. And this is why I say it's going to be a long haul. It's not just a question of whether they get a better air defense system or more drones or something of that sort. It's the nature of the Pakistan state. Now, we are into, I think, sort of tectonic situations with regard to the structures of nation states. And it's not just with Pakistan. It's happening in Europe. It's happening elsewhere. And it's noticeable because the old rules, the old norms, the old expectations no longer hold good. So we have got to anticipate what next. And we have to, as I said, desist from triumphalism. We have to be cool and collected and stay resolved in terms of our objective at each stage. Now, you had the kind of action we got last night, the night before, and actually Pakistan's escalation at every stage.
Exactly.
And, the other pointer here is many people will take credit for the ceasefire, but let's not fall into that trap of saying, well, X or Y did the friendly thing. It was India's demonstrated resolve that led Pakistan's self-admitted friends to tell them, don't be foolish and call it off.
Okay. Now, that's the point I was actually coming to, because many would argue that, and will Pakistan in their own country try to sell it as India's friend, United States, sought a ceasefire, so we agreed to a ceasefire, when the reality is that Pakistan was decimated militarily, though it sought to escalate. It tried some posturing, but even within Pakistan, there is this realization, their Fateh missile failed, their air force failed, their army failed, and their air bases all the way from POJK down to Rahim Yar Khan in Pakistan's proper Punjab were decimated. Muridke and Bahawalpur were targeted. Sialkot was targeted. It just shows we had the advantage. Should we not have pressed home even harder? We've been bleeding for 4 decades and longer, and we just stop it on day 3.
The point is, what do you want at the end of it? What would the military objective have been? Because in military operations, you need a very clear-cut military objective. You can't go in vaguely. It needs to be quick and surgical, and you need an end game as well. Right now, the stated military objective, and I don't question that at all, was to hit the terrorist bases. This was done. This is not the end of this exercise. There is a long haul ahead, which will require sitting down with those from the Pakistan side who are willing to sit down with you and are capable of delivering. Now, they may not be capable of delivering. This too we have seen in the past. Bhutto promised all, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto promised all kinds of things, and the man was hung at the end of it. But we've got to be clear. I think there are many messages in what we have seen in Operation Sindoor. One is, of course, the message to Pakistan, thus far and no further, and we will retaliate for every escalatory step that you take. That has been demonstrated. Secondly, to our own people, it has been demonstrated that we will give our armed forces what they need. I have often publicly stated on your channel and on other channels, India is underspent on its defense. We are apologetic about our requirements. This must never again be the case, because let's face it, we are alone. We have to fight our battles alone. We are too big a country to expect somebody else to come to our rescue. The message to the international community is that, you know, the advocacy of, oh, well, you know, both sides should de-escalate. We are friends with both sides and so on. Sorry, you've got to call a spade when it is obvious as to where the source of the trouble is. And
absolutely.
Again, comes down to India's diplomatic resolve. Fourth message has to go to the Pakistani people. And there are ways of doing it. You're a media person, and it has been done before, to point out that this was not a situation of India's choosing. It was a situation of of Pakistan's making of a few people within the deep state, which has caused this kind of harm, which is why it's very important that the decisions on the Indus Waters Treaty remain in place, that it be demonstrated.
That's the point I wanted to come to. The fact that we are still holding the Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance.
At the same time, that India will be firm in its resolve. And things have to change. There's no question about that.
So we're doing the right thing by holding Indus Waters Treaty in abeyance, and if there is ever a renegotiation, it has to be on our terms for more water for us, you know, and clearly now Pakistan is in no position to say, you know, there are people like the defense minister saying, if India builds a dam, we'll bomb it, and words to that effect. Now they know if they attempt to bomb it, they'll be bombed to Stone Age, in your appreciation?
You know, one particular contradiction in the Indus Waters Treaty, and in fact in India's water arrangements with its other neighbors as well, including Bangladesh, is that we have been seen as an upper riparian, and we ourselves have considered ourselves an upper riparian. In actual fact, we are a middle riparian.
Middle riparian, absolutely.
We are a middle riparian.
Tibet,
there is China, which has zero water sharing arrangements with any of its downstream neighbors. So therefore, when we seek to renegotiate the terms of the Indus Waters Treaty, I'm not suggesting that we do a Versailles. I'm not suggesting that we go for the jugular in terms of creating a greater problem for ourselves. But equally, it has to be workable for both sides.
Oh, absolutely. Ambassador Leela Punappa for joining me here on India Today. Many thanks. I now want to cut across and bring in Arun Kumar Sharma, Senior Associate at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, who joins me on this broadcast. Arun Sharma, how do you look at, one, the ceasefire that's been agreed to, and two, can a country like Pakistan be trusted, and will the United States be in a position to hold Pakistan's feet to fire, that if it gets the next tranche of the IMF bailout, then it will not use that money for terror against India?
These are interesting but complicated questions, Gaurav. So here are a few thoughts from my side. First, I think it's obviously welcome news that the death and destruction involved in any conflict is at least paused for the moment, and hopefully permanently for the foreseeable future. The second point is that as far as the IMF is concerned, it's a multilateral body. Yes, the United States has, as the largest shareholder and one of the biggest contributors to the IMF, a big voice in that. But at the same time, I think in the US interest, it's very important to see stability in the region. In particularly, it wants India to be able to concentrate on its partnership, both on not only on the economic side, but on the security side. So it doesn't want a quad partner, completely, I would say, uh, I'm looking for the right word. I would say distracted from that
Absolutely.
partnership. With
So
the
you're saying
conflict with
focus on
Pakistan.
China threat, focus on economy, don't be distracted by this conflict that's been imposed by Pakistan and perhaps, as some argue, at China's behest?
That again is a speculation, but the fact is that the reality is exactly ends up being the same, that this distraction is not in India's benefit and certainly not in the US benefit. And also, I think the US also understands the political dynamics of Pakistan, which is that it's a country that is got tremendous influence of the army. And we all know, and I have no hesitation in saying this, that there is a big distance between the will of the people of Pakistan and the people who are in charge. And there is, when any country, not alone Pakistan, when it's ruled by a certain military apparatus, there is a self-interest in the part of that apparatus to maintain tension. And unfortunately, the Pakistani people have not been able to get a governance that is truly democratic, that reflects their aims. And it has been largely driven by the sort of military and the establishment and their cohort, so to speak, and
But
which have strong interest in
this
maintaining tension.
engagement, post this engagement that's just happened, Pakistani air bases being decimated from Skardu to Rahim Yar Khan, 8 to 9 different locations, and now we are told 4 others have been added to it. So if 15 Pakistani air bases, military bases, radar stations, including Sargodha, Chaklala, have been targeted, and Pakistan's air defense could do nothing, will the prestige of not just Asim Munir personally, but Pakistan Army and Air Force in general, would it have taken a big hit in Pakistan?
That's entirely possible, but I would say the challenge is much bigger. The challenge is this event, like actually the Kargil event, also raised a lot of questions within Pakistan, where Nawaz Sharif was deeply questioned. Why did he start this whole Kargil effort? Because Pakistan had to really, take a back seat at the end when India responded in a very firm way. Same situation, I think, is likely to happen, but my bigger concern is this enough to create a fundamental change in the governance structure of Pakistan, which is really what we need, because India also would really welcome a stable, prosperous neighbor. Every country would like a good neighbor, as Canada is not discovering.
A stable, prosperous Pakistan has always bled India if we go by history. And if questions were put to Nawaz Sharif, then I'm sorry, questions were put to the wrong man. Questions should have been put to Pervez Musharraf, who was responsible for Kargil, a war that I had covered and have written extensively about. My question is today, questions, if they're put to Shahbaz Sharif, that will be dishonesty. Shouldn't those questions be put to Asim Munir, sir?
No, the question is should be indeed to the establishment, I entirely agree. And that's exactly my point. My point is this experience enough to essentially dislodge the stranglehold that the army establishment has on the governance of Pakistan, whoever is in political power? Because in the end, we all know where the real power comes in Pakistan, and unfortunately that source of power has a continuing interest in maintaining tension with India.
Oh, absolutely. Now, what next? How do you see this road ahead? Will Pakistan now rebuild its army, rebuild its air defenses, take these Lashkar-e-Taiba and Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorists elsewhere, retrain, rearm, and then relaunch them against India after some years? Or can the world that wanted this ceasefire, can America in particular, hold Pakistan's feet to fire on taking action against Lashkar-e-Taiba, Jaish-e-Mohammed and other India-centric terror centrals that operate out of Pakistan, in your view, sir?
Well, given the improvement in relations between India and the United States and the increased interest in India as a security partner beyond a economic partner, should certainly encourage the United States to be firmer with Pakistan than it has before on these matters. However, there is no guarantee or assurance that those efforts will be successful. I think I just want to make that very clear. The second point is that, the future of Pakistan really is in the hands of its people. And really, it's a sovereign country. It is a country of 260 million people. So it's not a small country by any means. And what I mean by a stable and prosperous Pakistan is a stable, prosperous Pakistan run by the will of the Pakistani people, not the military establishment. Because if the military establishment continues to be in power, I really don't have much optimism for a cordial, stable relationship of mutual self-respect in amongst neighbors as we would like to have.
Okay. Now, given what you've said, run by the will of the people, given that Pakistan Army has been humiliated, given the fact that Pakistan Air Force has been humiliated, will Imran Khan, who remains in Adiala jail, will Imran Khan and his supporters in Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf now be in a better position to mount an offensive against the Pakistan Army and this dispensation which was imposed on Pakistan by the army?
It's a really $1 million question. Most people, I would really question anybody's ability to predict this. I think time will tell. Certainly, it has given more ammunition to the critics of the army, such as they are and such as they can be, to be more vocal and more direct. But what the outcome will be, I'm certainly in no position to predict, and I'm almost sure nobody else is either.
And the fact that the Indus Waters Treaty sources, of course, we have this very strictly on sources, but sources in Government of India are telling India today that the Indus Waters Treaty, there'll be no change on that. That remains in abeyance. Now, is that one way that India can continue to put pressure on Pakistan that water and terror cannot flow together?
That is certainly going to be the case, in my view. But I think we have to also recognize a couple of things, that we can certainly withhold information. We can certainly get less collaborative on various aspects of it. But I think expecting that we can turn off the water is not realistic, because as we all know,
nobody is saying we can turn off the water, because that is, whoever says we'll turn off water is generally kind of lowering the standard of the discussion in terms of we are only going to not share details of water, stop it when it's convenient to us, give it when it's convenient to us. They weren't even permitting us. Pakistan would go, as you know better, sir, would go to international bodies and not even let us desilt the water, or not even let us run of the river project. So all of that, now we don't care what Pakistan thinks. We'll do what we want in the interest of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Wouldn't that be advantage India, and advantage clearly improvement of lives of people of Jammu and Kashmir, harness more electricity out of that?
Well, it all depends upon how we execute on that. Clearly, on the face of it, the answer would be yes. But also, I think I can expect the Indian government to be very measured and very strategic in what it will and will not do with reference to that treaty. But certainly, I think there is no doubt that it is a message to Pakistan that there is a price to pay for sponsorship of terror across the border.
Sir, stay with me. There's a big story that's coming in from the line of control even as we speak. And, Pakistan clearly cannot be trusted. It just shows on ground. Pakistan provokes along the line of control. And this is artillery fire that Pakistan has opened. And it's artillery in direct firing mode in Akhnur, in Rajouri, and along the international border in the Ranbir Singhpura sectors. There's been an explosion that's been reported in Baramulla. We are told that a suspicious drone has been shot down. Pakistan violates ceasefire along the line of control in Palawala sector in Jammu. Clearly, as we knew better, Pakistan cannot be trusted. Pakistan army cannot be trusted. Pakistan agreed to a ceasefire. This is the deceit I am talking about. Pakistan just cannot be trusted. 3:30, Pakistan's DGMO calls up our DGMO and then seeks a ceasefire and then says 1700 hours we will have a ceasefire. And now at 8:30, in just in 4 hours from now, from 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, so 3.5 hours, Pakistan is violating ceasefire already. Just a country that can never be trusted. Kamaljeet Kaur Sandhu joins me on this India Today special broadcast. Kamal, bring us details, and clearly I am so glad, whether it's that bulletproof jacket or helmet that has to be kept on standby when you deal with the state sponsor of radical Islamist terror.
Absolutely. What we're talking about is the preparedness, and that is what is actually being seen on ground, whether the ceasefire stands or doesn't stand. But it's been a test of fire, especially for Indian forces, especially at a time where Pakistan has tested our restraint. So this is where what we can tell you, that there is a blackout now in several parts, including Rajouri, where we are standing. But clearly, as far as there are certain inputs coming in about explosions, but we have to verify them, especially from our government sources. But clearly, at this point of time, what we're looking at is an unprecedented situation which was present in a couple of days ago, and this is where a sigh of relief coming in from various quarters, especially in regards to the announcement. Now, whether that's going to stand for the line of control, that now needs to be seen.
No, clearly Pakistan cannot make that distinction. Pakistan cannot be permitted. That's a very important point you're making, Kamal. That's a very, very important point you're making. But right now, that violation of ceasefire is continuing, not just along the line of control, but also the international border. Are you saying that Pakistan is trying to make that distinction between international border, that it will follow ceasefire along the international border, but line of control is a different story? Are we to understand that Palawala sector, that's at the international border? But describe to us, is that the distinction that Pakistan is seeking to make? Okay, give me a moment. Clearly, Pakistan, and if you go by history, you would know Pakistan can just not be trusted. We've seen that. You know, when that Lahore bus journey was happening, Karwai-Aman was the name of that bus journey to Lahore, and all of us were covering that Karwai-Aman. And then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee, he went, and this was supposed to be new history being written between these two countries. That was the time that Pakistan army was infiltrating on the Kargil heights. And just 3 months later, that was February when Vajpayee went, February 1999, March, April, May, 6th of May, Pakistan was beheading our young soldiers, Lieutenant Saurav Kalia and 6 other soldiers of the 4th Battalion of the Jat Regiment. This was in Kargil. In Batalik, Pakistan did this just 4 days later. And then there were ceasefire violations on the 9th of May in 1999. It was targeting our ammunition dumps. That's a long history of Pakistan stabbing India in the back, and we've chronicled it all in our lifetimes. I want to bring in India Today's Sunilji Bhatt, who joins us from Jammu. Sunilji, I believe there have been a series of ceasefire violations, not just along the LC, but also along the international border. What details can you get us?
Gaurav, hours after ceasefire was announced by India and Pakistan, Pakistan has once again resorted to ceasefire violations along the line of control in Rajouri district, in many subsectors in Rajouri district, as well as along the India-Pakistan international border in Akhnur sector. That's what the reports are coming from these areas. Although the army hasn't issued any official statement yet, but our local sources are saying that there has been ceasefire violations in these sectors and subsectors. As I said, that there has not been any official word from the army yet, but our local sources have confirmed that there is ceasefire violation going on, and it proves that we need to be very cautious while dealing with Pakistan. Pakistan can never be trusted because the history says that Pakistan has betrayed India time and again. Remember when the then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee with high hopes went to Pakistan in a bus to Lahore. Lahore Declaration was announced, And what happened after that? Kargil happened after that. So, if
no, and that wasn't the only
Narendra
instance.
Modi, when he assumed
We called
office
Pervez
on
Musharraf,
his
that military
inauguration-
dictator. That military dictator was, when he came to India, we gave him recognition as president of Pakistan, and then our parliament was attacked. Then in 2004, he promised that Pakistani soil will not be used for terror against India. That was the time that terrorists were being trained to target us. And in 2006, 200 people, can you imagine? 200 people were massacred in serial blasts in Mumbai trains. I covered those serial blasts in Mumbai trains. That was the time which is seen as this golden period between Manmohan Singh and Pervez Musharraf. There was this so-called 4-point peace plan for Kashmir, and then there was this conversation about making Siachen Glacier the mountain of peace. That was the time that Pakistan army was training Ajmal Amir Kasab and 9 other terrorists to wage war against India, and they were launched on 26/11 Mumbai wearing kalavas, given identity card with Hindu names to propagate the theory, that false theory of Hindu terror. That was Pakistan's doing in 26/11. Did Pakistan stop after that? It made several commitments, but it continued to bleed us, whether it was the German bakery blast subsequently or the Zaweri Bazaar blast. Then when they stopped targeting us here, they went and started targeting us in Afghanistan. We lost a defense attaché. We lost a senior diplomat. They targeted our consulates in Kandahar in Afghanistan. Did they stop after that? No, they did not. They continued to bleed us. Gurdaspur was burning. Pakistani terrorists infiltrated and targeted Gurdaspur. 2016, they targeted Pathankot. Then they targeted Nagrota. They targeted Uri. And then after Uri and Nagrota, it was Udhampur, it was Srinagar. There were multiple terror attacks, including Pulwama in 2019. So please understand, Pakistan remains a state sponsor of radical Islamist terror, and this military jihad complex has to be not defeated, but decimated. That's the only way. That Prithviraj Chauhan syndrome, you leave Muhammad Ghori today, he will come back the next year. There will be another battle of Tarai, and then the history of this civilization, it changed in the past. God forbid, this radical Islamist terror needs to be punished and decimated.
Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the News Today, your primetime destination. News, newsmakers, talking points. This is a News Today special on another big news day, where Donald Trump has announced a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Will the ceasefire hold? What are the objectives that have been achieved from Operation Sindoor? All the big questions, news without the noise. Let's get you the headlines first. Pakistan provokes along the LOC just hours after a ceasefire is announced. Pakistani artillery shelling reported in Aknoor, Rajouri and Arispura. 12 hours after Indian missiles and drones hit 11 Pakistan air bases, Islamabad agrees to a ceasefire with India. India-Pak military-level talks to take place on Monday. Ceasefire conditional Indus Water Treaty to remain suspended. India to continue diplomatic and financial strikes on Pakistan. India draws a new red line for Pakistan. Any act of terror will now be considered an act of war. Donald Trump takes credit, claims US mediated India-Pakistan ceasefire. New Delhi says US only piled IMF bailout pressure on Islamabad. But the big story that we are breaking at this moment, artillery shelling by Pakistan reported along Aknoor, Rajouri and Arispura international border. In Srinagar, 4 or 5 blast sounds have been reported. There is still a blackout in Srinagar. Chief Minister Omar Abdullah has said explosions have been heard across Srinagar. All of this, remember, coming just a couple of hours after a ceasefire was put in place. It was supposed to start from 5 p.m. We are now at 9 p.m. and we are getting these reports of the ceasefire being violated by artillery shelling by Pakistan. How does one trust Pakistan if they continue to violate the ceasefire? That's just one of the questions I'll raise. I'm going to go to Kamaljeet Sandhu, who's there in one of the places where that ceasefire violation has taken place. Kamal, what are you picking up? We were told that the ceasefire would take effect from 5 p.m. Now at 9 p.m. we are getting reports that the ceasefire is still being violated in Akhnur, Rajouri and Araspura.
Ceasefire violations taking place in several sectors, Rajdeep. What we're telling to you is a number of explosions being heard even in Srinagar and Baramulla. But these are hostile projectiles which are being taken down. What we know is that drones have been sighted across Kashmir Valley and even in the Jammu sector. And these continue to be the hostile projectiles or the UAVs. And remember, that is why this particular action is being taken place. What we can also confirm to you is there are multiple sporadic shelling taking place in different sectors, and this is where it seems that the Pakistani army is not in line with the ceasefire which has been announced between the two countries. But at this point of time, what we can tell you, situation again looks uncertain because blackout being carried out in several areas in Jammu and Kashmir at this point of time. This is not really good news because there was a sigh of relief coming in, especially the people of border and LOC, that things could eventually settle down. But that just within announcement of couple of hours, there is a blackout again. There are firing sounds heard. There are explosions heard. This is artillery shelling being done, especially near the area of line of control all the way up to Jammu. So several sectors are now reporting sporadic shelling which is happening. But clearly, as far as Pakistan is concerned, remember, the provocation continues from their particular side, because if they had agreed upon the ceasefire, they would have honored it. But meanwhile, what we see is Pakistan once again trying to wreak havoc. Meanwhile, what we've seen is that Indian side has shown restraint at this point of time. So we do not know at this point of time, because we haven't heard that sort of a response coming in. But definitely Pakistan now going back on its word, especially in regards to ceasefire and a major, massive ceasefire violation, and including the drone activity being reported in parts of Jammu and Kashmir.
You're saying drone activity is still reported, artillery firing reported. Presumably the BSF, as we are being told, is also ensuring adequate retaliation. India has made it very clear any provocation from Pakistan will lead to severe retaliation. Blackout in Srinagar. We are told that there have been violations in Gurdaspur as well, which is in Punjab. Sunil Ji Bhatt joins us at this moment. Sunil, what are you picking up? Are you also seeing explosions around you? Is artillery shelling still going on? Chief Minister Omar Abdullah is saying explosions have been heard in Srinagar itself. But where you are you still picking up explosions, artillery shelling sounds?
Rajdeep, as soon as the ceasefire was announced, people living in border areas had heaved a sigh of relief. But once again, Pakistan has violated ceasefire along the line of control in many subsectors in Rajouri district and even along the India-Pakistan international border in Akhnur sector in Paragwal area. So it's clear that Pakistan has once again betrayed us, and it's not new. If we go into history, there are so many instances when Pakistan had said that it will maintain peace and tranquility along the borders, but then again Pakistan betrayed us and it violated ceasefire along the line of control as well as along the international border. Rajdeep, what we are learning from our sources is that multiple explosions have been heard in Srinagar city, and this has now been confirmed by even Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah. He has just tweeted and he has said that what has happened to the ceasefire that was announced, multiple many explosions heard in Srinagar city. That's what he was trying to say. And drone activity is also being witnessed in many areas in Jammu and Kashmir. Sirens are also on in Samba and even in
Is it less than
It's clear that
are the activities that you are witnessing less than yesterday? Is there a reduction in intensity, or is it as intense as it was yesterday? A quick answer.
there is reduction in the activity, but the fact is, Rajdeep, that a ceasefire was announced, a formal ceasefire was announced, and even U.S. President Donald Trump tweeted about it. And within hours of this ceasefire being announced, it has gone for a toss because Pakistan has once again violated ceasefire. It has resorted to shelling and fighting in the border areas in Jammu and Kashmir, and it makes it clear that Pakistan can never be trusted. In the past also we have seen that the then Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee with high hopes had gone to Lahore in a bus, and what happened after that? We had Kargil. Similarly, Pervez Musharraf had made promises that he will not allow territory of Pakistan to be used by terrorists, but then we had terror attacks in our country. Similarly, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, on his very inauguration, he invited Nawaz Sharif, he held talks with him. Then what happened after that? Prime Minister Narendra Modi went to
Sunil, I'm just going to focus for now.
He was in Afghanistan, he went to Lahore.
Sunil, I just want to focus on what we are seeing at the moment. We'll discuss what you're saying with guests. You're making important, relevant points, which we will take to our guests, because Pakistan does have a history of betrayal of promises and commitments they make. But just to get a ground report, Maushmi Singh joins me from Gurdaspur. Gurdaspur also, Maushmi, we are told that there have been ceasefire violations.
Rajdeep, there have been drones that have been spotted. I've recorded one visual myself at closer to the border. But yes, there is a blackout, but we saw markets open. The situation is less intense than yesterday and day before. You can say it can be a percentage. In terms of percentage, it's 10%. If yesterday it was 100%. So just one or two drones spotted here and there. But the mood in the village is mixed. There is a lot of suspicion over the ceasefire and over the ability of Pakistan to keep its promises. They believe that Pakistan never walks the talk, and whatever it says, it never does. And there is also a bit of happiness, or you can say satisfaction, that perhaps life can return to normal. Children can go to school and colleges, and you know, the economy can be back on track. But most importantly, they believe that you know, nothing should come at the cost of national security. And if a peace has been brokered, hopefully Pakistan will adhere to it.
Let me go from Maushmi to Shivani Sharma. She joins us from Srinagar. Shivani, we heard Omar Abdullah, the Chief Minister, say that explosions have been heard in and around Srinagar. What can you tell us?
Rajdeep, explosions have been reported in the skies in Srinagar, and this has been ongoing, and this is being taken as a massive breach of the ceasefire that was announced right in the evening. And apart from this, we are getting a number of inputs from a number of areas along the line of control where similar shelling has also been reported, and this drone activity from Baramulla, from Srinagar, from where the other reporters have been reporting are also being reported off. So we are now waiting for a response, in fact, from the armed forces and the government on this ceasefire violation once again from Pakistan. So we have to wait and watch. This is still a developing situation, Rajdeep, but what we are learning and what we are experiencing right now from the ground is that there has been a massive breach of the ceasefire.
Massive breach of the ceasefire is what all our reporters are reporting. Less intense, and I think that's important to stress compared to what was the situation 24 hours ago. But clearly, there has been violations, and India and the BSF is retaliating. So the BSF, our border security force, is retaliating. But worrying signs that just a few hours after the ceasefire announcement, formally announced, we have these violations taking place. Just listen in to what was said just a couple of hours ago by Vikram Misri, our Foreign Secretary, and the backdrop where Donald Trump had tweeted, and it was then retweeted by the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, that the two sides had agreed to a ceasefire starting at 5 p.m. and it had been welcomed by the US President. Listen in to what Vikram Misri said a short while ago.
Director General of Military Operations of Pakistan called the Director General of Military Operations of India at 15:35 hours earlier this afternoon. It was agreed between them that both sides would stop all firing and military action on land and in the air and sea with effect from 1700 hours Indian Standard Time today. Instructions have been given on both sides to give effect to this understanding. The Directors General of Military Operations will talk again on the 12th of May at 1200 hours. Thank you.
So that was around 6 p.m. We are now at 9 p.m. So barely 3 hours after India formally in a short statement said that India would adhere to a ceasefire, the two DGMOs, Director General Military Operations, would meet. Are we back to square one? And those questions therefore will be asked. Operation Sindoor, were the objectives achieved? Will this India-Pakistan ceasefire really hold? Importantly, can Pakistan really be trusted to act on terror, on cross-border terror? Those are the questions that we're going to raise. Joining me at this moment, Vivek Kaju, former Secretary in the Ministry of External Affairs, has dealt with Pakistan also. Rajiv Dogra was former Indian Consul General to Karachi. We'll also be joined by military experts in a moment. But I want to come to you, Mr. Kaju, first. 6 o'clock, India announces, based on a few half an hour, 45 minutes after Donald Trump formally tweets out the announcement of a ceasefire. And what do we have at 9 p.m.? Pakistan once again violating terms of the ceasefire. Artillery shelling is on. How do we trust Pakistan? Will this ceasefire hold, Mr. Kaju?
We can never trust Pakistan. That is a given. That's point one, Rajdeep. Point two is that after ceasefires are announced, there are stray cases, I underline stray cases of firing between troops. That is not considered serious. But what your reporters have been telling us is serious. I carefully heard one of your reporters say that the intensity is down to 10%, but 10% is bad enough. It means either instructions have been given from the general headquarters in Rawalpindi, or that local commanders are acting on their own, Pakistani local commanders. In either case, it is very worrisome, and clearly we will have to wait and watch for the next 24 hours, especially very carefully.
So what's your sense? Is it, just to stop, you made an important, your sense, is it local commanders who are violating the ceasefire, or is it that the GHQ and the civilian leadership may still be at cross purposes? Because very clearly it was mentioned in the statement that two DGMOs, the Director General Military Operations, would be meeting on Monday. So are the local commanders not aware of the ceasefire? Could that be the reason? Or is there a difference of opinion, as we've seen in the past, even in Kargil, between the military and the civilian leadership?
The State Department readout was that the Americans were in touch with Sharif, with the Army Chief, Asim Munir, and with the NSA. That would indicate that Asim Munir had come on board. Prima facie, that would be the indication. And the fact that the Pakistani DGMO spoke to our DGMO led me to think in that direction. But now I would like to wait for the next 24 hours before I come to a firm conclusion about Asim Munir's motivations. Because we know that Asim Munir has swallowed a very bitter pill. Why do I say that? Permit me one sentence here. The terror machinery of Pakistan is part of their security doctrine. Let us forget other aspects of this military operation. The fact that India, right at the beginning, was able to target Bahawalpur and Muridke, which occupy iconic status in the entire terror uh, jihadi setup of Pakistan is a very bitter pill for Asim Munir, and he would be under tremendous pressure to proceed with operations from his jihadi proxies that the army has developed over 35 years. So, at the moment, I have question marks. After hearing your reporters, I have
Right.
question marks because he'll have to pay. My last point, he'll have to pay a price, Rajdeep, to curb these boys because that is what India has made clear. I think the uh, this operation Sindoor is a clear indication that India will not hesitate to use kinetic action through its conventional forces to
Okay, I
an
think
unacceptable attack of terror. That is a statement, as I have said in my writings, of a Modi doctrine. And that is a very bitter pill for Pakistan to swallow because it changes the entire dynamics. It was changing after Uri, surgical strikes, after Balakot, but this has conclusively changed it. And that doctrine was that any use of kinetic force by conventional forces is an escalation. Vikram Misri rightly said something that some of us were saying for years, that the escalation, the original escalation on the nuclear ladder is an unacceptable terrorist attack. So this is something which in doctrine, large parts of the Pakistani army will find it very difficult to accept. And certainly the jihadi establishment, if I may say so, is today shaken because of the strikes. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, on Bahawalpur and Murid.
you've said that, and you've said that emphatically earlier as well, that the strikes on Bahawalpur and Murid Ke have shaken, you believe, the Pakistan jihadi establishment. Rajiv Dogra, we're also getting a tweet a short while ago from Shahbaz Sharif, Pakistan's Prime Minister, welcoming the ceasefire. Shahbaz Sharif suggesting, therefore, that he's fully on board. But I go back to 1999. Nawaz Sharif was on board when it came to agreements with India. The Lahore bus ride of Prime Minister Vajpayee ended in the icy climbs of Kargil. Given what we've seen in the past, Pakistan shaking hands when it came after Pathankot as well, and then you had Uri. So how does one trust this Pakistani establishment, especially the military establishment, given what Mr. Vivek Kajju has just said, that for Asim Munir, for the Pakistani general, it's a bitter pill to swallow?
Rajdeep, you emphasized trust. I'm reminded of what Reagan said, trust but verify. Pakistan has betrayed India on the very first step. 3 hours back, it said, trust us. That's why the DGMO rang up. And that's why the technical term was not ceasefire, but halting of military operations on land and the air, which means that there is no firm signature. Second thing is, your reporters interviewed some villagers in a remote area of Jammu and Kashmir. They were aware that India and Pakistan have reached an agreement. They were happy that their children could go back to school. How is it that the Pakistani army posted on their side of LOC and international border were not aware? Unless there's
so you don't buy the local commander theory. You don't buy the theory that local commanders are doing this. You don't buy it at all.
No. I'm not contradicting Vivek.
No, I'm saying in general. I'm saying in general, do you believe local commanders surely would have been told by now that we've decided to go on a ceasefire?
They would have been told. That's exactly the point. My point is that there are two sides to it. Either there's an element in Pakistan army which has decided to revolt against Munir and go against his orders. That is number one. The second point is that Munir is being deceptive. He has promised one thing at one level and decided to take action at another level, because for whatever reasons. But that is their internal matter. Whether he is removed, whether there's a revolt or whatever, a solemn promise, and Pakistan is known not to keep its solemn promises. A promise given to another nation has to be kept. If it is not kept, then there is something very wrong with that country.
Absolutely. I take your point, and I think you make that point very strongly. I just want to go to get a military voice at this moment, because Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni, former Chief of Staff, 14 Corps, is joining us. Appreciate your joining us, General Kulkarni. As you can see on our screen, blackout images once again. Artillery shelling, explosions heard by our reporters. Chief Minister Omar Abdullah saying 4 to 5 blasts heard in Srinagar. Gurdaspur also has witnessed some explosions or artillery shelling. Are we seeing Pakistan once again betraying its solemn commitments?
Thank you, Rajdeep. Leopards don't change their spots. Pakistan is a rogue state. It has a nuisance value. We've seen it in 65. The ceasefire will be declared. Still, you will find somewhere or the other jostling for better positions carry on. We've seen it in 71, and we've seen it in 1999 also, despite Nawaz Sharif in US on the 4th of July comes back, there was still jostling going on to ensure that nobody is found at a place which is not very comfortable they are with. So this kind of a jostling does happen after the ceasefire. Not the word ceasefire in this case is wrong, because it's only stoppage of fire. So there is again a subtle difference between a ceasefire and stoppage of fire. So if Pakistan, as I said, is a rogue state, and you cannot trust Pakistan at all. And therefore, I think it's time, whichever commander on ground opposite us have decided to violate this stoppage of fire, must be given back in the same coin, or rather harder, so that they understand. Because wherever it may be.
General, are you clear that these are local commanders operating independent of GHQ? Surely not.
Sometimes they do. I've seen it. Sometimes they do. So you can, sometimes the orders to us come so fast that find that this is what it is. The other person may have not got orders in writing, or he'll insist, or he's a little, the word that we generally use, ulta khopdi. He doesn't understand that there is ceasefire, or some nation is at interest his heart, or whatever it be. He will just keep doing it. He will just give orders to his troops, keep firing. Doesn't matter. When they ask me, I'll tell them, is it in writing? Don't tell me verbally. Last time also you gave me verbal orders and they were not correct. So Pakistan has a tremendous nuisance value, which we saw it and we keep seeing it. And therefore, this kind of I won't call it aberration. It's sometimes intentional. It is sometimes intentional. Maybe they're not pulling along. So they do indulge in this kind of a thing. But as I said, Pakistan cannot be trusted. Pakistan is a rogue state, and it has lots of rogue elements within Pakistan army who can even revolt against their own chief or against their own commanders. Yeah.
Let me give you the breaking news again. If you've just joined us, Pakistan has violated the ceasefire. 3 hours after the ceasefire, Pakistan has provoked once again, launching drones, artillery fire, yes, less intensity than it was yesterday, but it is a clear violation. A ceasefire violation is a ceasefire violation. Pakistan army, is it accepting the ceasefire or not? Why is the Pakistan army defying the civilian government? That's the big question. I'm also joined at this moment by Air Marshal Diptendu Chaudhary. Air Marshal Chaudhary, you're hearing these reports of Pakistan violating the ceasefire again, barely 3 hours after official commitments were given. Are you surprised?
Yes, I've just heard about it, and frankly, coming from our esteemed neighbor, I'm not surprised at all. We have seen their behavior over the years. The problem here is that when you have a military ruling the roost, and suddenly when they are forced to take action, there will always be elements who will defy, and they have a huge track record of doing this. There will always be elements who will defy and go their own way.
But that would never happen in the Indian system. How is the, imagine in India today, the political leadership of Narendra Modi commits to a ceasefire, There's no army general who's going to say, sorry, Prime Minister, I don't accept it. I'm going ahead and violating it. This is Pakistan's army state, isn't it?
Asdeep, this is the classic difference between India and Pakistan. We are a democracy. We are a military which has firmly been under civilian control. We respect the constitution. We respect rules, order, law and order, and the normative behavior of the world. We are a nation which is vastly different in our outlook compared to Pakistan. And I think the words of General Munir had made it amply clear how far apart we are. And the fact of it is, in India, it is unthinkable because this is, inconceivable in our Indian scenario, something like this would happen. So this is, I'm not surprised at all. The question is that we have to be gauged and careful here. While there'll be an immediate reaction to hit back in the same coin, but what needs to be borne in mind that when we do so with vengeance and fury, this could again bring back the whole story to square one and give enough fodder to the rogue elements to go their way and continue pursuing the path they have been carrying on till now.
Right. I think you make a very important point. That therefore, we've got to handle this very, very carefully at this moment. Just to give our viewers more breaking news, Pakistan, the blasts are continuing in Srinagar. 6 more blasts have been heard. Let's get that clear. 6 more blasts heard in Srinagar. Air defenses, the guns are engaging projectiles with explosive payload. Anti-drone system is hitting the drones hovering around the cantonment area. So 6 more blasts and parked drones have been sighted in Srinagar. We are seeing really projectiles with explosive payload also being engaged. So worrying signals there coming in from Pakistan suggesting that they're not accepting perhaps, or at least elements may not have accepted the ceasefire just yet. Vivek Kaju, what does India do in such a scenario? Given the fact that no less than the US president has taken his personal reputation in a way by coming out and saying, I've brought the two sides together, I welcome this ceasefire. You've had J.D. Vance saying the same thing. How does India now respond? Does it respond with rage or wait for a few hours or a day to see whether the ceasefire holds or not?
Look, Rajdeep, after hearing you now, and based on my experience of dealing with Pakistan, which stretches over a few decades, I'm reasonably certain that the use of drones is indicative of a decision in General Headquarters. The use of drones in the manner in which they are being used in Srinagar, and you mentioned that they are targeting the cantonment, is certainly indicative of this fact. Now, why are they doing it is a question that I'm sure would be engaging our political leadership and our military leadership today. And
are you saying though that the ceasefire is off for now, or do you believe that we cannot say that till we know in the next 24 hours exactly what happens next?
I would like to wait for 24 hours, but I think this is a very serious development which will engage our people through the night today to see how it evolves. That's point one. Point two, in my experience, the Pakistan army is both a political army and a professional army. The army has never revolted against a chief. Never. And it would be wrong of us to think that the chief can be elbowed out through a coup. The only time I recollect when the generals went to a chief and said that his position was untenable was with Yahya after his defeat.
After 71.
That's right, in 71 and in 58. After that, no chief has been removed. One chief voluntarily left, and that was Karamat, when the civilian prime minister objected to his speech. on the National Security Council constitution.
So effectively,
So
what you're
what I'm
saying,
saying is,
Asim Munir, General Munir would know exactly what's happening on the ground.
I cannot believe that the use of drones. You see, the generals are there, the air marshal is there. They know much better than me. But my experience of 6 years on the desk in the 90s and later following Pakistan has been that the exchange of small arms fire, of even mortar fire along the LOC or the IB in J&K can be occasionally the work of local commanders, but not when heavy artillery is used. Then it has to be sanctioned by General Headquarters, and certainly when aerial vehicles, whether manned or unmanned, are used in the way that they are being used in Srinagar, would be with the sanction of the military leadership. I cannot believe that any local commander would dare to do this and survive in his job. Let's not forget that the Pakistan Army Chief does not forgive any dereliction of his orders. We'll be wrong to think that internally they are rogue. There have been cases of people revolting, and every time they've been caught, they've been court-martialed and punished, and the army chief's position has remained sacrosanct.
Okay, let me bring in General Kulkarni just to understand India's response in a situation like this militarily. You've had the military commanders also at the border who perhaps got the orders today from the political leadership or the military leadership in Delhi that we are going in for a ceasefire. 3 hours later, they see the shelling taking place on the border. What do the local commanders do? How do they interpret it? We are told the BSF is retaliating, but there are these mixed signals coming in. How does a military commander on the ground respond?
He retaliates without fail. He immediately starts retaliating because he would have asked the superior and told his superior, look, you told me there is ceasefire, but they are firing. I'm sure immediately the orders will follow, retaliate. Come on, open up. If they've opened up with RT, open up with your RT. If they've opened up with mortars, open up with mortars. If they're with small arms, just use small arms. That's it. There's no question. We retaliate, and we instantly retaliate without even looking back once if they've opened fire, because if the life of our troops is in danger, there's no question of not retaliating, because we know they are rogues, absolutely rogues. Some of them will follow. If some of them don't follow, give it back. That's the only way they understand only that language. Yeah, right.
Rajiv Dogra, do you believe that that India's political leadership will have to pick up the phone, will have to get on a hotline both with Washington and maybe through back channel with Islamabad as well to find out what exactly is happening?
Indian leadership or Indian military get on to any phone at all, because DGMOs were in touch. And if there is firing from the Pakistani side, which has started, isn't it the duty of Pakistani DGMO to immediately ring up his counterpart in Delhi and say that, sorry, we've got a rogue commander and we're going to deal with him, but please don't think that this is a violation of our agreement 3 hours back. That has not happened. If that has not happened, then obviously there is connivance at the top. So we have to think whether America's rumored mediation or good offices have helped at all.
You know, given what you're saying, I just want to turn to you, Air Marshal Chaudhry. You know, last 24 hours, we've seen use of air power. The Pakistanis attempted to use it. India has responded and targeted Pakistani air bases. That presumably would take it once again back on that same escalatory ladder. At the moment, it is confined largely to artillery shelling. There have been a few instances of drone attacks. Where does the Air Force get in?
Rajdeep, just to put facts right, Air Force got in long before, because air defense gets in long before. So even at the first instance of all this, the air defense would have been churning. They are usually the last to wind down. But the Air Force's reaction has been very graded. after the first initial strike, our approach has been very defensive and very, very gauged and measured. But the moment they struck our air bases all along the front, and if you see all the there's a very systematic targeting of air forces, air bases, frontline air bases. And why is that? Because Pakistani Air Force has elevated its position to a point as the keeper of, a big player in the entire military instrument of force in Pakistan. Remember that they have been leveraging the US and the Chinese to their greatest advantage, and they have singularly focused on building up their air power and cover the gaps after Balakot, so that in future, which such a occasion arise, that they would have covered the bases. Now, when they started escalating the whole game by targeting our frontline bases, technically, if you look at it, it's a military target which has been hit. It's an act of war. But we showed enormous restraint. But when they continued in this manner, that is the time now we struck back with fair amount of lethality in their bases. And I think the craters that we are showing, if they are from Rahimia Khan, it shows the extent of damage we could do. Again, we have been restrained by probably doing limited targeting, because if you really look at it, to take out an air base in a classic counter-air operations, the kind of force used and employed would have been significantly more, and not just one or two craters. So again, we have shown a restraint by going up the escalatory ladder. But if it continues in this manner and this scale, then it depends on how it's going to go. But what we must bear in mind, drones give a very, they fall in the gray zone. It's very easy to carry out drone warfare and step back from the military domain. Oh, we are operating in the gray zone, and not really using classical hard power or a military power in that option. There are very fine lines that we are treading here. But one thing you must remember in mind, the fact that we have targeted Pakistani air bases and air depth bases, do remember a fair chunk of Pakistani Air Force have American inventory, F-16s and the associated equipment. I don't think, and that must have certainly be a factor after our serious airstrikes. In possibly they would have played a serious role in the US coming into the negotiations.
Okay, that's interesting, because there are lots of theories doing the rounds, Vivek Kaju, and I want a short answer to lots of theories doing the rounds as to what suddenly changed in the last, say, 12 hours. Till this morning, both the countries seemingly were on an escalatory ladder. Along at about 5:30, we get this tweet from Donald Trump saying he welcomes a ceasefire. Meanwhile, I can tell you, sources saying Army's Chinar Corps headquarters was the target of Pakistani drones. All the drones have been neutralized. Pakistan's bid to target the Chinar Corps headquarters has been foiled. Sirens now in Amritsar as well. But the Army's Chinar Corps headquarters in Srinagar that attempt has been foiled. So clearly, this is not just another ceasefire violation. Yes, there were artillery shelling, but all the Pakistani drones that were used went as far as the Chinar headquarters. How is that to be interpreted is now going to be the big question, Vivek Kaju, because something changed for Donald Trump to go public. So did the Americans get the wrong signals? There's also talk that having got their bailout yesterday from the IMF, Pakistan was then willing to come on board with a ceasefire. How do you see this entire ceasefire?
Look, Rajdeep, I have always believed that the IMF bailout was never in danger. No one would ever allow Pakistan to go down the tube. They will always be kept on a ventilator or a drip economically. No one wants a nuclear Somalia. It's a country of 24 crore people. I mean, let's smell the coffee. So that's one part. I don't think the IMF bailout was really an issue.
So what changed?
I think I think two processes. My own experience is that two processes were perhaps taking place simultaneously. One was a direct process, which was between India and Pakistan, and that is what we've stressed, that we were in touch with them directly. Second, the American State Department has issued a statement. Let's keep Donald Trump's comments aside, the American State Department has issued a statement, and the statement says that the Americans mediated a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. The word used is mediating, and they said they've announced this. They've also said other things in that statement. It's a 3-paragraph statement, which we have refuted, and I think correctly refuted, because if we were to accept what is in that statement, that says that the two countries will start, the governments of India and Pakistan have agreed to start talks on a broad set of issues at a neutral site, is something which will be contrary to everything that we diplomatically, and I'm sure Rajiv will agree with me, everything that we have done after Simla. There
No,
have
but
been
why did? No, but then why did we?
Hear me out.
No, then how
Hear
does
me out.
how do the Americans go ahead with a statement like that? If
No,
you're
I think,
saying
as
that
I
this
told
goes
you,
against everything that we stand for since Shimla.
I think they misinterpreted things, because we've said we were in direct talks. We've denied this. Strangely, the Ministry of External Affairs, I haven't seen deny it, but the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has denied it. So there is some kind of a Government of India denial of this at the moment. But I think a plainer denial is needed. So as I said, two processes were in play at the same time, and the Pakistanis are acting like Pakistanis always do. This is very serious stuff. If Chinar headquarters are being targeted by drones, then I will reiterate, it cannot be a local commander or set of local commanders' activity. It has to be approved by GHQ.
But you know, Rajiv Dogra, the fact therefore is that here we've got this American statement, 3-para statement, saying the two sides have even agreed to talk a range of issues at a neutral venue. Now, did Donald Trump, has something got lost in translation? I mean, how is one to interpret this? Or was this seen as, you know, give Pakistan something to feel that they can satisfy their domestic constituency, look for something that will give India a sense that they can go ahead and enunciate their concerns? I mean, how are we to interpret this?
Look, Rajdeep, I think speculations can go on, but it's not our business as professionals to speculate. What is there in black and white is the statement, American statement, which Vivek has read out. And hopefully by tomorrow morning, MEA would respond to that. It has already responded subtly in Foreign Secretary's first statement to the press this afternoon, where he said that emphasized that DGMOs of the two countries got together, and that was supplemented by External Affairs Minister's tweet, where also he emphasized that it was a direct talk between the two countries. But that apart, I mean, I think slowly these things will come out. If I am speculating, let me start from Nawaz Sharif's statement, which was put out on social media 2 days back, where he repeated his earlier advice to Shehbaz Sharif that please bring it down. So is it possible that civilian authorities, for some reason, may have agreed to the American pressure and for a moment got the army chief also to agree, on which he went back immediately thereafter? But as I said, this is speculative. I do not have any solid things to back it up.
You see, that's the problem. There's such a fog of war that still exists at the moment. Mr. Kanju, a quick comment. Yes.
No, my friend Rajiv Dogra and I entirely agree that as professionals we should not speculate. But then after that he began speculating himself, and he would be smiling at that. So the point I'm making is that I think
but I said
the process.
He's entitled. You see, we are all speculating as to what changed. You see, just as we went up an escalatory spiral so quickly, suddenly when a ceasefire is announced.
Permit me to complete. I believe that we were in direct conversations, but I think Rajiv will agree with me that the Americans are a meddlesome people, and they have said that we were working through the night. They are the preeminent country in the world. They don't want a distraction at the moment. So they were working the phones too. It's been my experience. I've handled Pakistan at a low level, middle level for many years. And I've seen Kargil. I've seen the Lahore thing. I've seen Agra. I know that several things are in play at the same time. I have every belief in what the External Affairs Minister has said. I'm not saying that that's wrong. I would like a more categorical assertion on our part here,
right?
Because the American State Department statement is on record. So therefore there should be an MEA statement on record.
Right. I want to stop you for a moment because we are also getting news that from a minister in Gujarat, several drones spotted in Kutch. So now it's not just in Kashmir, it's also in Kutch. We've also heard of drones being sighted near Pokhran in Rajasthan. So clearly this is, in a way, some would say back to square one, not quite in terms of intensity. Last night was particularly intense in terms of the kind of drone firing that took place from across the border, but there is a complete blackout in Kutch. All of this is leading to this fog of war at the moment. I just want to play a story from what has happened on the ground for a moment, because look, if you're living along the LOC, life has been very tough. In places like Uri, it has been consistent shelling for several days. And guess what? It's the innocent villagers who've suffered because of Pakistan violating the protocol when it comes to shelling across the LOC. This is a story of the people who suffer.
After targeting villages along the line of control, Pakistani artillery firing has turned to densely populated towns. Artillery shells hit Rehari locality of Jammu city on Saturday.
This is not a border village or border town. This is the heart of Jammu city, and look at what has happened here. Early this morning at around 5:40 a.m. there was a loud explosion here. We spoke to the local MLA here a short while ago. He claimed that a mortar shell landed here in this residential locality. But see the extent of damage that has taken place. The first floor of this house has been completely damaged. We are being told that 3 people have been injured in this explosion.
सुबह जब हम पहुंचे ये घटना हो चुकी थी, देखने को मिला कि पूरा जो ऊपर माउंटी है वो डैमेज है, आसपास के कुछ लोगों को छोटी माइनर इंजरीज आई है.
Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Omar Abdullah visited the affected areas. If a Gurudwara was impacted by shelling earlier, this time the area around Shambhu Temple in Jammu was targeted by drones.
So we're just trying to show you, look at the car. He was inside in his room. This is when this shelling had impacted. Look at this car. It's just pierced through huge metal. It's pierced through this particular wall out here. And clearly what we've seen here is also the civilian areas which has come under a massive fire, especially from the Pakistani army.
लोग डरे हुए हैं अंदर माहौल के अंदर, बाहर तो आ नहीं रहे. तो जैसे जिसको पता लग रहा है, जो आपने अपनी गाड़ी लेके सब गांव की तरफ भाग रहा है, कोई कहीं भाग रहा है, कोई कहीं भाग रहा है. हालात अपनी जिंदगी के में मुतासर हो गए सब. ये फर्स्ट बार रजौरी के अंदर ये इतनी बड़ी मूवमेंट आई है आगे, इसके पहले कभी नहीं आई है.
The house has been impacted in a big way. This is a massive blow by Pakistan, at least in the civilian areas, and that's what we've seen. Pakistan regularly attacking civilian areas. Remember, there's no army or other security establishment nearby. This is deep in the civilian area which has now been impacted, but that's the life of resident of a line of control, and this is where things remain uncertain for families like these.
जब मैं नमाज पढ़ रही थी, बहुत तेज आवाज आई. हम वैसे जमीन के साथ लगे, तो बाहर थोड़ी देर जब रुका, बाहर आके हमारे पड़ोसियों ने हमें बताया कि भाई आपका तो सब कुछ क्रैश हो गया है, निकलो यहाँ से, निकलो यहाँ से. हम गए, उठे, पास में जाके दूसरे घर में गए, हमारा सब कुछ खत्म हो गया है, पूरे का पूरा खत्म हो गया हमारा.
मैं सोया हुआ था, अचानक ही ब्लास्ट हुआ था. मेरी थोड़ी सी आंख खुली थी और
1 सेकंड भी नहीं लगा, पूरा रूम धूल से भर गया, कुछ दिख नहीं रहा था कि जैसे पूरा काला ब्लाइंड हो गए हम।
While India and Pakistan agreed to a ceasefire, Islamabad, unable to inflict damage on military facilities, targeted civilian population along the line of control. With Sunil Ji Bhatt and Kamaljit Sandhu, Bureau Report, India Today.
I think it's important to emphasize, as that story does, that look, Gurdwaras have been targeted. This morning, a temple in Jammu was targeted. We've had 2 children who were going to a Christian missionary school in Poonch who lost their lives in the shelling. Pakistan's unprovoked shelling and drones are little short of madness. And that's the word I used, and that's what I said even on Twitter when I heard of the ceasefire. I hope the madness stops, because when you have a situation of every night, night after night, drones being sent across, shelling taking place, it's little more than lunacy. It's almost virtually pushing India to escalate the conflict when all that Pakistan is doing is unprovoked firing against our border villages and civilian populations. That needs to be stressed. More than 20 civilians have, around 20 civilians have lost their lives in Poonch, Rajouri. This morning an ADC was killed in the shelling. Now, if that is not madness, what is it? Now, Vivek Kaju, as we conclude, I just want to ask you one last time. Do you believe, therefore, that the Pakistani army has got a wake-up call from the Americans this afternoon and told enough is enough, and therefore may have agreed to a ceasefire only for another section to go against it? Is that how it operates? Is that how the Pakistani army could be operating? I thought they were a very professional army.
You know, I believe it is a professional army. I believe that Asim Munir is in charge of the army. The army corps commanders, when they meet together in a corps commanders conference, they have a tradition of discussion. But ultimately, the buck stops with the army chief, and once he's taken a decision, everyone falls in line. So I can't believe that this is an action which is taking place without his sanction.
Okay, I think we've got a sense from all our guests that what we've seen over the last hour with these violations only reiterates the point that various Indian establishments have learned, often to their cost. Do not trust the Pakistanis at their word. And we can go back in history. Atal Bihari Vajpayee trusted them, went on the Lahore bus yatra, and we had Kargil. We've had in the past other attempts made by Indian prime ministers to reach out to Pakistan. Prime Minister Modi reached out to Nawaz Sharif in 2015 December. We had Pathankot just a month later. Manmohan Singh reached out to the Pakistan. Sorry, Mr. Kaju, what were you saying?
I said 10 days later.
10 days later, yes, 10 days later, December to January, yes. And then we had instances where Manmohan Singh reached out to the Pakistani leadership, and we had Mumbai 2611. Air Marshal Chaudhary, you want a final word? Are you hopeful, optimistic as we end the show at the moment? I'll be getting in more guests, or are you pessimistic? Will the ceasefire hold?
When it comes to Pakistan, I'm fundamentally cynical by nature, but there is this lingering hope inside me that that somewhere down the line they'll see the reason. My only sense, which I would like to end with, is that it'll be worth the while possibly to watch and wait the extent, because the Pakistani military, and especially some of the leadership, and for the Air Force, I know for a fact, would love to look at every option and tweak every option before they are forced to the table.
Okay, let's leave it there. I appreciate my guests joining us. Welcome back. The big breaking news this evening. 3 hours after a ceasefire was announced, Pakistan has provoked and violated it once again. Pakistan has launched drones and artillery fire in some parts of Jammu and Kashmir, in Kutch, as well as in Gurdaspur. Is the Pakistani army not accepting the ceasefire that was announced by no less than US President Donald Trump? Is the Pakistani army defying the civilian government? Is the army, as the army's shelling continues along the LOC, what comes next? What we are now told, and Gaurav Sawant now joins me at the moment. Gaurav, you know more than anyone else on what exactly the army is looking at. We're now being told, Gaurav, army shelling has stopped along the LOC. Now, what was it? About 8:30, 8:45 when the shelling started, there were drone attacks. 4 or 5 blasts reported in Srinagar, no less than Omar Abdullah reported them. But am I to understand, we are getting lots of conflicting signals. 3 hours after the ceasefire Pakistan provoked with the shelling and those drone attacks, now we are being told the shelling has stopped along the LOC. Could it have been, therefore, as some are suggesting, local commanders who may want to send a final signal before they retreat? Or that the Pakistani army has decided that they are not going to follow the ceasefire? What's the sense you're picking up?
So Rajdeep, if this is the handiwork of local commanders, then these local commanders clearly need to be sacked by General Asim Munir, because they are leading to a severe problem for the Pakistan army. The Indian army is exercising restraint at this time, but had the Indian army responded to ceasefire violations, and they were not just limited to drone sightings, there would have been consequences for the Pakistan army. But you're absolutely right, Rajdeep. The latest information that we're getting on a defense WhatsApp group is yes, drones had come, multiple drones had been spotted, but now it appears largely gone back, confirming. This is the information that I've got from a very senior source in the government.
What does that mean when you say they've gone back? How is it different to what we saw yesterday and day before?
So when yesterday and day before the Pakistani drones came, they came in large swarms, all the way from Leh Ladakh to Sir Creek. It was something like 500 drones coming in 36 different locations. Right now, they are coming in much smaller numbers, including some that were spotted very close to the Srinagar core headquarters. And that would actually indicate a serious breach in India's security, because if they were neutralized very close to the core headquarters, engaged very close to the core headquarters, it would indicate that they have managed to come all the way in from the LC and come all the way up to Srinagar, Rajdeep. Then some were spotted in the Palawala sector where there was firing. Some were spotted in the Rajasthan and Punjab belt, and some in Gujarat. So either these are local commanders, and it cannot be one local commander. Right. It has to be multiple local commanders over an area, or they're still trying to send out a message, ceasefire, yes, but don't think we are friends. There's no meeting of the minds and clearly no meeting of the hearts between India and Pakistan.
Okay, let's go to our correspondents. They'll tell us what's happening on the ground. Remember, our correspondents have done remarkably in the frontline areas. Just to give you a sense of where they are, they've all been through areas where there's been blackout. They've stuck it out there, not easy in those parts in times like this. Kamaljeet Sandhu joining us, Shivani Sharma joining us. Shivani, you cover the Defense Ministry. What are you picking up? Is there a sign that the shelling has stopped and a genuine sense of some kind of calm at the moment?
Rajdeep, right now in Srinagar, the explosions amid air have stopped. There's no air activity since last 20-25 minutes. But prior to that, around 9, it started, and there were multiple, I can say, I myself witnessed them. There were more than 4 dozens that these seem to be the similar explosions that are being heard when the drones are neutralized. And similar reports have come from multiple places along the western borders. The blackout still is maintained here where we are reporting from. And along the LC, there were reports of shelling continuing in the evening, even after the ceasefire was announced. And what we are picking from the sources in the army, the top officials of the army, they say that the LC is calm right now. There is no shelling happening. But certainly there was a ceasefire violation, because this seems actually similar to what was happening yesterday, till yesterday. So there is, we are all awaiting an official response on this kind of activity that has been witnessed late evening today.
Kamaljeet Sandhu, tell us what you're picking up. You told us that till about an hour ago there was shelling going on. Has that completely stopped?
Well, Rajdeep, speaking from experience, the shelling does take only 4 minutes or maximum up to an hour or two. And that's the trend that we've seen in the past few days. But let me tell you, what really happened is that as soon after ceasefire was announced, there was a jubilation, people were celebrating, and meanwhile, while we were speaking to people about ceasefire being announced, that's when we actually started hearing loud explosions. This is obviously artillery fire, because the long range is where the artillery is actually brought into by Pakistani army, and that's where the shells actually drop in, not just on military establishment but also the civilian areas. And that is why 3 people were killed today in Rajouri and 3 were injured. But let me tell you, this seems rather serious. It actually does seem that Pakistan is up to some sort of mischief. Let me tell you that Indian army showed extreme restraint, not responding, not giving in, and not reacting to that, because remember, after some time these violations did stop, and meanwhile the calm prevails. But this is an uneasy calm. With a neighbor like Pakistan, you really cannot trust whether they actually going to follow the ceasefire or going to violate it. But clearly this is not gone in well, because we also saw multiple drone sightings, not just in Rajouri where we are, but also in several of the other locations, be it Jammu or Srinagar. And this is where there is a larger concern, because these sightings are not just limited to J&K. This is also spread out to
We are also getting
Punjab
reports
and
of
other locations
sightings.
as well. And so
We are
that
getting
means,
also reports of
Pakistan
sightings in Punjab, in Gujarat, in other parts as well. I'm also joined by Mir Farid, because Mir, we are getting conflicting reports from Srinagar. There were Omar Abdullah suggesting there were 5 to 6 blasts. Now the army suggesting there are no blasts that have taken place in Srinagar. Can you give us the exact situation as it stands?
Well, Rajdeep, these were aerial blasts and in fact, 15 to 20 of them, there were fixed intervals, gaps, but there were blasts. And then there was aerial activity, which of course everyone saw. These guns, air defense guns, opening up and trying to neutralize the threat. But it's quite complex if you look at it and you think about it. The fact that these drones really manage, as Gaurav also pointed out, they've come all the way from POK, covering around 200 kilometers odd, and they have come in unspotted. They have not been engaged anywhere, which is quite surprising. And if that's the case, then obviously it is a massive security breach. How could they come to this point without being engaged, in spite of such a robust
Yeah, but we have to see whether India has chosen. Yeah, but we have to decide. Let's be very clear. We have to decide whether India has chosen for now to hold Pakistan to its word, to see whether these activities that Pakistan is taking, whether they constitute, presumably, Gaurav, some kind of aggressive intent. What is the intent behind what we've seen? The good news at the moment is the army has issued a clear statement saying that the shelling has stopped. Brahma Chelani joins me at this moment. Brahma, good to have you on the show. Tell us how you're reading what's happened over the last few hours. Pretty dramatic. 5 o'clock, Donald Trump tweeting that there's a ceasefire. 6 o'clock, India formally backing that. At 9 o'clock, signs that Pakistan could have violated the ceasefire. A little after 10, signs that maybe, just maybe, Pakistan is perhaps going to have to adhere to the ceasefire conditions, even though these drones also have been spotted. How are you? Are we getting mixed signals, and how do you see that?
This whole ceasefire thing leaves many questions unanswered. First, it's not a ceasefire agreement on paper. It's a ceasefire agreement orally. So we don't know what the conditions are and whether Pakistan will hold its word. And the second thing that is worrying is that this ceasefire framework brokered by the US creates a false equivalence, equating the victim of cross-border terrorism with the perpetrator. There was no effort whatsoever in the US intervention to get Pakistan to agree to dismantle its terrorist infrastructure. But there is a more fundamental question that India had the upper hand militarily. It had the military momentum. And the question that we need to be asking ourselves is, did India snatch defeat from the jaws of victory? Is this a repeat of what happened in 1948 when the Indian Army was marching toward victory and then suddenly we agreed to a ceasefire? Or
you answer that question. You see, I'll get Gaurav also to weigh in on that, but you answer that question. Do you believe, and I'm going to ask my producer to keep those the sound of those explosions a little low so that we can hear very clearly, but are you saying that we have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory? Isn't that a bit excessive, particularly given that it's just been a few hours? Maybe we don't want to go down an we don't want to go up an escalatory spiral. That's as simple as that.
Well, first, in modern world history, I have never come across a very short military campaign. This campaign by India lasted only 3 days. 3 days. In 3 days, no military campaign can achieve any real objective. The Prime Minister laid out what India's objectives were. He publicly laid out those objectives. And in 3 days, we decided to terminate this military campaign without having accomplished any of those objectives. Even though as the stronger side, India was in a position to escalate or de-escalate at a time of its choosing. Yet, we did not bring a superior military power to bear on Pakistan in a way to impose high punitive costs and to ensure an end to Pakistan's proxy warfare. Just when we had degraded Pakistan's air defenses, we had damaged or destroyed some of their key military bases, instead of pressing home that advantage, we decided to hang our boots. Why? Why did we do that?
Okay, why? Let me put that to Gaurav Sawant. Gaurav, you've heard Brahma Chalani rather controversially they're suggesting we've snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. I think defeat and victory are two very strong words here. But what he seems to effectively be suggesting is why the ceasefire? I mean, there are those who are mystified. What suddenly changed in the last 12 hours to go from an aggressive approach towards taking on, retaliating to Pakistan, blasting its air bases, to at 5:30 or 6 in the evening, India saying that we have decided to agree to a ceasefire. What's changed? Why did this happen?
So, Rajdeep, this was a very limited campaign. When the Prime Minister spoke, I'm not defending the government. I'm just trying to make the limited point that I completely agree with Professor Brahmachalani at the onset that India should have pressed home the point. India should have decimated other air bases in Pakistan and, of course, some of their core headquarters. But then we should have been equally ready to then take some pain. If we had, for example, hit the 4 core headquarters in Lahore, they could have hit one of our core headquarters, whether in Srinagar, where they sent across that signal that their drones came pretty close. They could have hit any of our locations in Punjab or in Rajasthan. Are we ready for that? Are we ready for a full-scale escalation right now, when our economy is doing very well? No, my point is we are ready. But have we sent across that message? For the first time in India's history, battling terrorism, you've hit Bahawalpur, you've hit Muridke, you've hit Sialkot. You've sent across that message. Each time Pakistan tried to do something, you were one up. You've hit him on 11 of his military bases. You've actually humiliated the Pakistan army.
Let me turn it around. Let me turn it around. That we had a limited objective.
Yes.
And the limited objective was to send out a signal to Pakistan that if we want, we can come as far as Bahawalpur, Muridke, Lahore. We can come to the heart of Punjab, and we can, we can take the battle there. Having done that, we also know the costs of an escalatory spiral. And therefore, we pulled back. Now, Brahma, maybe that's rationality. Maybe we've chosen a more pragmatic approach. At a time when we want to focus, that we were being led up an escalatory spiral, perhaps some thought by Pakistan, and many believe Pakistan goaded by China, we didn't want to go down that route. That's why we agreed to pull back. We've sent out the message and then pulled back.
A military campaign is a serious operation. There's nothing like demonstration that we can reach Bahawalpur or we can reach Rawalpindi. No military mission is ever launched with such demonstrative objective. In military strategy, you launch a mission with clear objectives. The Indian objective, as laid out by the Prime Minister, was to end Pakistan's proxy warfare. Have we come anywhere close to that? Let us be clear. The Pakistani military generals are going to portray the outcome of Operation Sindoor as a victory for the Pakistani state. Make no mistake about it. They have always looked at India as a weak-willed nation. They have tried to make up the power asymmetry with India through stronger political will. And in the current battle of rival political wills, they will show that they triumphed over India. The narrative in India...
But let them, if I may intervene, let them show that. The truth of the matter is we are an economy which is growing. They are an economy which needs to go to the IMF for bailouts. Look, at the end of the day, Brahma, maybe we've taken a conscious choice. Maybe we also wanted to get out of a situation. Maybe the US gave both sides an opportunity to get out of a situation that could have got spiraled out of control. I had Fareed Zakaria on the show last night. He said, look, this could lead to a misadventure or a miscalculation because you can't trust what the Pakistanis will do in desperation. So maybe we've decided, okay, we've sent out a message. This was never intended to be a large-scale military operation.
Well, Rajdeep, there are costs to be paid even if you have superior military power. And India is paying costs already. International investor confidence has been badly shaken. International tourist arrivals to India have come to a stop. And the economic costs, the invisible economic costs of Operation Sindoor will continue for some months. They can't be overnight. You can't change overnight that, okay, today we were fighting, tomorrow we are at peace, and therefore the international investor community can be happy with that situation. Let's be clear about what we were willing to bear with. We were willing to bear with some risks and with some costs. We did call Pakistan's nuclear bluff not once. We did it with Balakot airstrike. We did it with Operation Sindoor. We should have pressed home the advantage that we had secured by degrading Pakistan's air defenses. That left the field open for us to inflict punitive costs on the Pak military. Having done the groundwork to inflict costs, then abruptly we have withdrawn and terminated the campaign. As I said, never before in modern world history.
No, maybe it wasn't as, was it as one-sided as you're suggesting? Because the truth of the matter is, if India sent out a firm message to Pakistan that we can hit you all the way into Punjab, Pakistan also wasn't necessarily taking a step back. And that's the danger, that then you get onto an escalatory spiral, which maybe with China goading Pakistan, could get us into dangerous unknown territory. We hadn't even mobilized the military as yet. So when you say military operation, this wasn't a hot war that was going on. That's my point. We have stopped it at a particular time. Brahma is calling it a military operation. Yes, Brahma, very quickly, and then Gaurav.
Well, if our intent was to send a demonstrative signal to Pakistan and end this operation in 3 days, we would have been better off had we not undertaken Operation Sindoor. Would have been much better for us economically and diplomatically had we not pressed ahead with Operation Sindoor. But once you launched it, once you launched a military mission, you had to take it to its logical conclusion. Terminating it.
No, but maybe what was the end game? You see, I'm not able to. What was the end game? I don't think we had a clear end game in mind because the Pakistanis were provoking us night after night. We were retaliating, but there was no end game after the initial targeting of Muridke and Bawalpur. That's my point. You were not getting into you didn't want to get into a warlike situation.
So there are two things.
So where is victory and defeat here?
No, so there is victory in every which way. You've decimated his air defenses. You've targeted 11 of his points. But if I may, Professor Chilani, and I completely agree with you on all your points. My limited point is there are other ways to carry out punitive strikes against Pakistan, and especially the Indus Waters Treaty that will still be kept in abeyance. Now, that is one big stick that we will continue to wield against Pakistan as a middle riparian state. We will give them water in terms of without information. I know we cannot stop it, but we'll start development project that will continue to help us build more electricity, get more electricity out of it, harness that more for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. Okay. There are long-term steps that we will continue to take to deter Pakistan, is my understanding of the situation.
So you don't think you don't agree with Brahma's basic premise that we have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory? Correct?
Personally, I completely agree with him in terms of we should have continued to hit till the time Pakistan is actually Pakistan submits, to accepting defeat. Okay, however, if we have to remain on the path to becoming the third largest economy, we will have to prioritize, and we may have to prioritize now, because otherwise China will have the advantage, which I would never want China to have that advantage.
Before I go to the other guest, one final word from you, Brahma. I had Fareed Zakaria on my program who made an important point. We are the larger country. We have much more at stake. We are an economy on the up. Pakistan is a basket case. The military there needs legitimacy. In the asymmetry of power, we were well ahead of them. But therefore, countries when they have the moral advantage, also need to take a strategic call. And maybe India, with a bit of help or nudge from America, took that call. I mean, why call it victory and defeat? Why not just simply say that India took a considered strategic call?
India, under successive governments, has had a tendency to adopt half-pregnant approaches.
True.
Biologically, there's nothing like half-pregnancy. But India has, under successive governments, believed in half-pregnant approaches. And you have seen this now. First, the Indus Waters Treaty. International law is clear. If one party consistently violates it, or there's a fundamental change of circumstances, the other side can suspend or withdraw from the treaty. India chose neither to suspend nor withdraw from the treaty. Instead, it has kept the treaty in abeyance, a term not defined in international law. In other words, again, a half-pregnant approach. Operation Sindoor will also go down in history as a half-pregnant approach of India.
Okay, you've called it a half-pregnant approach, controversial, contentious, Brahma. Professor Brahma Chelani, appreciate you joining us at this moment. We're getting breaking news at the moment that while shelling has stopped at the LOC, drones have been spotted in Gujarat, and Omar Abdullah has said air defense systems are on alert in Srinagar. So India taking no chances. The Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir also asking the question, what happened to the ceasefire? And that's a question many are asking tonight, because there are mixed signals that have come from Pakistan. The shelling has stopped. Clearly, the intensity of the drone attacks have not been quite like what they were yesterday. But having said that, they continue. And any such drone attack or shelling is a violation of the ceasefire agreement that was signed only 3 hours ago. There's a blackout in Amritsar, India taking no chances. And therefore, we will have to wait for several hours before we know whether Pakistan is genuinely acting on its commitment to that ceasefire or not. Let's get in more voices. Einar Tangen, American-Chinese political analyst, is joining us from Beijing. Always good to have you, Einar, on the show. K.C. Singh, former Secretary, Ministry of External Affairs with us. Daniel Block, Senior Editor, Foreign Affairs Magazine and contributing editor, The Washington Monthly, joining us. Thank you all very much for being on the show at the moment. Aina, let me get...
And we have some news coming in at this point in time. Let's take a look. There is tense calm, thankfully, in Jammu and Kashmir overnight because no explosions were reported. And firing was also not... And we have some news coming in at this point in time. Let's take a look. There is tense calm, thankfully, in Jammu and Kashmir overnight because no explosions were reported. And firing was also not reported. Tight security at the borders of Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Rajasthan, also Gujarat. Power supply, we understand, has now been restored in Amritsar. In Jammu and Kashmir, and this is what we are picking from our sources, situation is normal. Through the 10th and 11th of May night, no reports of fire, enemy contact or hostile movement along the international border line of control. In Punjab, state and border district administrations are maintaining state of heightened security. Red alert maintained in Amritsar out of abundance of caution and security of the people. Robust border patrol mechanisms in place as well. In Rajasthan, no hostile movement or activities reported along the international border or over the airspace through the night. Security establishment on a state of alert. In Gujarat, state headquarters and district administrations have held a review meeting. The situation is normal through the Ran and over the coast and airspace. General alerts is that the notice to mariners remains in place due to naval activity in EEZ. The NOTAM along the entire western sector is active until the declared date of 13th of May 2025. This from our sources is what we're learning at this point in time. I'm going straight across to Ashraf Vani joining us this morning. Asim Basi also continues to be with us. After a series of violations, Ashraf, what was seen yesterday, particularly in the Jammu region, it seems that the night went off peacefully, of course. There is no easing as far as tensions are concerned. It's anticipated that anything could happen, and that's the reason why a tense sort of a calm that has been seen.
Absolutely, Sariha, you are right. The night was completely peaceful across the Kashmir Valley, not only here in the Srinagar city, which was too much tense during the last 48 hours, but also in the main areas of the line of control, which the life of those people who are living on the line of control was completely messed, derailed. They were shifted to the safer areas. When yesterday this ceasefire was announced by the government of India, most of those civilians went back to the villages. But there was some unfortunate incident then 3 hours later than time set for the ceasefire, when Pakistan once again started ceasefire violations, but not at that intensity what we had witnessed in the earlier 3 days. Finally, when the defense ministry spokesman Misri spoke on the television that the army has been told to respond any kind of ceasefire violations, and probably the Pakistan was conveyed that message, and finally there was completely calm. The electricity was restored in the Srinagar at about 11 p.m. and then followed by the other parts of the Kashmir Valley. But also, as you said, that the security forces had been told to be very vigilant, to be alert, because Pakistan cannot be trusted, and that has remained the history with Pakistan whenever there is any kind of deal, any kind of friendship with the Pakistan, and they always have proved doing the backbiting. But one thing is clear, there is the reason for it. Pakistan has many stake actors. There is not the responsible government what we have in the India, that whatever government decides, that is being followed by each and every stakeholder. But in the Pakistan, army is running their own show. They are taking their own decisions. Government is running its own show and taking its own decisions. And also the third factor, that is the terror machinery, or we can say the terror groups. They did not follow both of them. They are also on their will and do. And that thing has happened yesterday also in the Nagrota area of Udhampur, where there was some exchange of fire on one of the military posts. One army personnel, what has been confirmed by the army, got injured in that terror firing. The area has been settled, cordoned off. There is a search operation, and also the investigation what was going on in the Pahalgam terror attack, that has resumed again. Early morning today, even today it is Sunday, but then there was a series of raids by the SIA, which is the Special Investigation Agency of Jammu and Kashmir Police, related to the Pahalgam terror attack on 22nd of April. And also, there is one important factor to the ceasefire. It is implemented on the ground. It is visible on the ground. When the flights for the Srinagar will be resumed, when the IPL matches will get resumed, but it is expected that all will happen soon. The 12th May, tomorrow, is the very important day when the DGMOs of Pakistan and India will talk again and probably then this ceasefire process will completely shape up.
All right, I'm going to leave it at that for the moment. Ashraf, getting in those details, I'm also going to be joined. In fact, Asim continues to be with us, and so does Kamaljeet Sandhu joining in this morning as well. I'm going to come to you first. Asim, state and border district administrations are maintaining a state of heightened security. Like I was, talking to Ashraf about this as well. No one taking any chances. All right, we have some news just coming in. State investigating agency raids are underway at multiple locations in South Kashmir. That's the information. This is in fact being done